Chapter 19. At this time, the entire volcano bar was under the control of a group of armed policemen wearing bulletproof vests and helmets. The special task force led by Huang Linjun had arrived as soon as possible. Even though he had seen Li Onping's crime scene not long ago, Geng Zhong still couldn't help but feel his stomach cramp when he saw Shang Jinbang's body on the ground. Huang Linjun patted him on the shoulder and said, "Well, don't look at it. How's the count?" "There are a total of 19 dead people, including the boss of the volcano bar, Hua Bao, Hu Qing's right-hand man, De Fei, and Shang Jinbang. The suspect escaped from the rooftop before the special task force arrived." Huang Linjun interrupted him. With a cigarette in his mouth, he said, "Well, do you think he did it?" Naturally, he was referring to the criminal who had recently committed a series of murders in Zhongdu. Geng Zhong hesitated for a moment before he nodded and said, "Judging from the crime scene, it's his style. But this time, all of them died of external injuries. None of them is brain dead. Besides, we have a lot of witnesses, so it won't be long before we can catch him." After being busy for more than half an hour, the lights in the distance suddenly turned bright as a black car with police lights drove in. A bald, short, and fat man came out of the car with a pale face. He didn't even look at Huang Linjun and the other team members and went straight to Shang Jinbang's body. This man was the head of the Public Security Bureau in Zhongdu. When Huang Linjun looked at Geng Zhong and said, "My master's son was beaten to death. This old dog is anxious." Geng Zhong looked at Huang Linjun in surprise. Although he was temporarily transferred to the task force and became Huang Linjun's subordinate, they were not so familiar with each other that they would speak ill of their boss. "Where's your master?" Huang Linjun didn't care and asked. "Sick leave." Hee. Huang Linjun smiled disdainfully and puffed out a puff of smoke. "Your master is a wily old fox. He sees the opportunity very early. This task force is a fire pit. Now that Shang Jinbang is dead, it's fine to catch him, but if we can't, Geng Zhong couldn't help but say, "So many of us can't catch him? He's not an immortal. Even if he is, in modern society, once all our departments coordinate and mobilize the power of the whole society, there's no one we can't catch him." Huang Linjun smiled but didn't say anything. On the side, Wan gathered everyone and began the on-site mobilization meeting. His face was flushed red as he gave a fierce speech. He said that he would solve the case within 24 hours and search for the criminal overnight. He said that he would never let such a crazy criminal get away with it, and that he would protect the safety of the people's property. Wan looked calm on the surface, but his heart was in a mess. He hated that criminal to death. Shang Anghua was his immediate superior, and he was also promoted by Shang Anghua. Now that his youngest son was dead, he couldn't imagine how terrible Shang Anghua's anger would be. Moreover, he was originally the director of the Public Security Bureau of Zhongdu City. Recently, there had been a series of vicious incidents in Zhongdu City, and it was the same criminal. He could not absolve himself from the blame. Halfway through the meeting, Wan was called out by a phone call. An angry roar could be heard from the phone, and Wan's face was covered in sweat. He held the phone and kept nodding and bowing. He was like a dog wagging its tail and begging for mercy on the other end of the phone. When he finally finished the call, Wan wiped the sweat off his forehead and told Huang Linjun, "Such a serious and vicious case can't be delayed any longer. If it's delayed, every minute and every second will be irresponsible to the people. Huang Linjun, I'll give you 24 hours. No, I'll give you 3 more days. You must catch the criminal for me. If you can't, you can wait to go home and farm." After saying this, Wan hurriedly got into the car and left. Only the members of the task force were left sighing. 2 hours later, Aqua Arc, Shang residence. The entire house was like the calm before the storm, making people want to die from the oppressive atmosphere. In the study, Shang Anghua put down the phone and rubbed his forehead. He looked at Wan in front of him and saw that he was fidgeting. He then said, "Olden, you've been with me for 10 years, right?" When he said this, Wan was shocked. This was a typical conversation between a lackey in the movies. It couldn't be, right? He was so scared that he almost knelt down. He gritted his teeth and said, "Shanggu, 3 days. I'll definitely solve the case in 3 days. I'll watch Shimbong grow up. If something happens to him, I'm more heartbroken than if my own son died." Within 3 days, I'll definitely send that bastard to you. Do you think I don't know what kind of person you are? Shang was snorted and scolded. One had almost no professional skills. His only merit was that he was very obedient. Moreover, he was very good at arranging personnel for the police. But if it was a normal person, Shang would definitely not scold him like this. But after losing his son at an old age, his heart was already in a mess. The murderer isn't an ordinary person. Ordinary police can't handle him. He sighed and said, "What I want you to do is not to report the cases during this period of time. Generally speaking, the city would directly report such major and important cases to Tianjin." But, Juan hesitated. If he didn't report it, once it was found out, Shang would be fine, but Juan would have to bear the consequences. After reporting it, Tianjin will know about it in less than half a day. When they send people over, the murderer won't be under my control. Don't worry, I'll also send people to block the other channels. In Tianjin, no one will find trouble with you. Shang face was as cold as ice. I want to personally deal with that bastard. Juan hurriedly agreed and then pushed the door to leave. But just as he opened the door, 3 men came in. Among the 3 men, 2 were foreigners at first glance, and only 1 was Asian. They were all wearing casual clothes and looked young and ordinary. But for some reason, when Juan saw them, he felt a chill from the bottom of his heart, as if he saw a pack of wild wolves. "Oh, you guys are here. Take a seat first." The 3 men listened to Shang Jinbang's instructions and casually sat on the sofa. Juan had never seen these people in the Shang family. He was puzzled and couldn't help but take a few more glances at them as he retreated. At this moment, the only Asian among the 3 men suddenly raised his head and looked at him, cruel and fierce. With just one glance, Juan couldn't help but tremble, and the sweat on his back soaked his shirt. "What are you doing here? Hurry up and leave." At this moment, Shang shout made Juan come back to his senses. The feeling just now immediately disappeared without a trace. He hurriedly nodded and walked out of the door. Before he left, he saw the Asian man smiling at him maliciously, which gave him goosebumps and made him run even faster. This fatty is really fun," the Asian man said in half-baked Xia language with a smile. "I didn't ask you to come here to play." Shang said, "I don't care what means you use, but immediately help me catch that bastard." The police station was bustling with activity for the whole night. With Shang Jinbang's death, almost all the police in the city were mobilized to find the murderer. Li Qian was released at 7 in the morning. For the whole night, no one took her to check her injuries, treat her injuries, and send her to the hospital. When she left the police station, she was still limping. That night, a total of 4 or 5 police officers interrogated her. No one asked about the fact that she was beaten up, but only about the details of the killer. All kinds of good words, bad words, threats, and promises were said. But when they found that she really didn't know anything, they still let her go. She was lucky. That day, almost all the people in the volcano bar were taken back to the police station for interrogation. In particular, a few big men who were beaten up by Li Onping but didn't die had to be tied up in a cast to be questioned. They were still in the police station. The weather became colder. Li Qian tightened her clothes. Her body was cold and painful, but her heart was warm. She touched her underwear. There was a small bump. The camera that was used in the volcano bar was lying there quietly. She hid it and didn't find it by the police. "Who exactly are you?" It was dark and cold. Jay opened his eyes and found himself tied to a pillar. The surroundings looked like an abandoned warehouse. In the darkness, he looked down and found that the wound on his broken arm was casually bandaged. However, the way he bandaged the wound looked very unprofessional, which made him frown. "Black Ghost, you woke up earlier than I thought." Hearing this voice, Jay immediately woke up. He remembered that he was knocked out after killing the man. There was a sharp pain in his neck. It seemed that his bones were broken. So, other than the man, did the killer have other companions? "Black Ghost, I have a few questions for you. If you want to live, answer me honestly." Jay didn't say a word. He was very angry that he was beaten up like this. But it was useless to be angry, so he could only force himself to calm down and try to think to divert his attention. He listened carefully to the other party's words but couldn't tell when and where they came from. It was dark all around. He couldn't know how big the warehouse was, or even if it was a warehouse. There are voices coming from all directions. Are they talking to me through the radio? I can't see anyone, and they tied me up. It seems that they are targeting my ability. Judging from the wounds on my neck and broken arm, it's been less than 4 hours. But why did they take me away? Logically speaking, the powerless Shang Jinbong is a better target. Didn't they succeed? Or did they also capture Shang Jinbong and interrogate both of us? At this moment, the voice sounded again. Black Ghost, tell me your name. Jay thought for a moment and replied, Charlie. The other party was silent for a moment, then said, Very good, Charlie. Your cooperation will save you a lot of pain. He doesn't know my name? Or did he deliberately not expose me? Impossible. If the interrogation doesn't expose this lie, it's meaningless. He really doesn't know my name. Without giving Jay any more time to think, the voice asked, Charlie, what's your relationship with Shang Jinbong? Jay thought for a moment and replied, We're classmates. We used to study at the same university. Then, the voice asked a few more common questions. Jay answered all of them fluently and made up nonsense. The other party has no experience in interrogation. Is he a newbie? Or is he an amateur? Then I'll have to find a way to lure him over. As long as he's within range of my ability, I'll have a chance to escape. TSK. If West and the others know that I fell for an amateur, they'll probably laugh to death. Suddenly, the other party changed the topic and asked in a low voice, Charlie, what's your ability? Jay knew that the other party would ask this, so he replied without thinking, My ability is to release poison. As long as I touch something, I'll poison it. If an ordinary person is poisoned, their organs will fail and they'll die within an hour. The other party didn't answer. Jay only received dead silence. Charlie, I'm very disappointed. You shouldn't have lied to me. Chapter 20. You guys have to catch that bastard. Don't worry, that's just a small bug. Jay is the weakest among us, so his defeat doesn't mean anything. We'll catch him. In Shang Angwa's study, the Asian youth lying on the sofa laughed. But are you so afraid that Tianjing will send people over? Even if they come and catch that criminal, we can still snatch him back. West, don't bring the Federation's methods to the Xia. I originally thought that what happened a few days ago was because someone in the bureaucracy wanted to deal with me. So I kept you guys as my trump card. Now it seems that even Zhenbong is dead, so someone is here to take revenge. No one in the bureaucracy would do that. Shang Angwa said, so I called you guys over to catch that bastard as quickly as possible. Because the upper echelons of the Xia, especially the royal family, are not strict with the management of ability users' crimes. On the contrary, as long as the ability user's ability is found to have enough potential, then all crimes can be forgiven. Especially now that the international situation is grim, the pressure on the northern border is increasing, and the demand for ability users is increasing. So you're worried that person will be recruited? The yellow-skinned young man called Wester laughed and shrugged his shoulders. Using his half-baked Great Xia language, he said, Shang, if they know about this, who do you think they will send over? Are they also ability users? Only one, the National Security Secret Service. Shang Angwa said with a sullen face, or according to what you call them in your circle, the Xia Dragonfinch. With a whoosh, a stone had already shot Jay's knee, shattering his kneecap. The severe pain made Jay scream uncontrollably. Charlie, you've disappointed me. You shouldn't have lied to me. Feeling that his right knee had been shattered, Jay gritted his teeth and thought, how did he know that I lied to him? My ability is very secretive, and without professional detection equipment, it's impossible to know the specific principles. Could it be that he found something on a masked man's body? But he should have died of gunshot wounds in the end. Controlling the distribution of oxygen in the air, that's your ability, right? The next moment, the voice said something that surprised Jay even more. How did he know about my abilities? I was betrayed? No, that's not right. A psychic ability user? What's going on? The voice didn't give Jay more time to think and continued. Charlie, your heartbeat just now was about 80 beats per minute. I will start asking you questions again. If your heartbeat exceeds this number, I will throw a stone at you. If you hesitate for more than 2 seconds before answering, I will also throw stones at you. Do you understand? Jay was stunned and didn't answer. The next moment, another stone exploded on his left leg, shattering his left knee. Ignoring Jay's screams, the voice asked slowly, "Do you understand?" Understood. Jay endured the pain and hurriedly replied, "Your name?" Jay, age 25, after a few questions. Your ability? Controlling the flow of oxygen in a 10-meter radius. Your relationship with Shang Jinbong. Bodyguard. Who sent you? Shang Jinhai. Shang Jinbong's big brother. Liaoping heard this answer and frowned. Shang Jinhai is also an ability user? Where is he? In the Amstead Federation, he is known as the genius of Xia. When he was studying abroad, he was valued by the head of the League of Stars branch. You better not go against the Shang family. Otherwise, when Shang Jinhai activates the League of Stars, you won't be able to stop it. Unfortunately, Jay didn't know that Shang Jinbong was already killed. Otherwise, even if he was threatened, he wouldn't have answered so easily. Hearing the name League of Stars, which he had never heard of before, Li Amping paused. From Jay's answer, this organization seems to be a very powerful ability user organization. But in the Amstead Federation, could it be an official organization in the Western continent? He thought for a while and asked, "This is Xia. The government won't let them do as they please." Ha! Jay breathed heavily and laughed. Xia. 10 years ago, Xia violated the non-aggression treaty and started a war on the northern line of the continent, attempting to invade the ice fortress. In the end, the entire Xia Dragonfinch's elite fighting force was wiped out by the League of Stars. 10 years have passed. Do you think they dare to stop the League of Stars? Xia and the ice fortress, one in the north and one in the south, always had conflicts on the border. Liaoping knew this, but he didn't know that 10 years ago, Xia actually started a war against the ice fortress. He was sure that he couldn't find this information in any news or newspapers. "Thank you for telling me so much," Liaoping said in his heart. So he continued to probe. Not long after, he found out about the Shang family situation and the remaining ability users they sent. Liaoping wanted to ask more about the world's ability users, but from the looks of it, this Jay was just a small fry and didn't know much. According to him, the League of Stars was the world's strongest ability user organization that spanned across several big countries. After him were the ability user forces of the 6 big countries in the world. For example, the Xia Dragonfinch and the Yemester Federation's imaginary organization. He and the other 3 were unaffiliated individuals contacted by Shang Jinhai. They accepted the Shang family's control under the condition that they were promised a generous position in Stargate after they succeeded. Last 2 questions, Jay. What level are you? What are the abilities of the other 3 ability users? Haha, I'm at most level 0. The black man laughed self-deprecatingly. Among the 4 of them, I'm the weakest. That's why I don't have any freedom and have been arranged to follow Shang Jinbong all day. As for the other 3, their abilities are superior to mine and they're more suited for battle. I advise you to give up. You're no match for them. With a swoosh, a stone hit Jay's shoulder, causing blood to splash out. You only need to answer my questions. With a muffled sound, Jay breathed heavily and shouted, "If I tell them, even if you let me out, I won't be able to live. You have to promise me, after I tell them, you'll let me out immediately." "Fine, I promise you." Hearing the other party agree so easily, Jay became hesitant again, worried that the other party would go back on his words. "Do you think you have any other choice?" Hearing that, Jay struggled for a bit, then finally made up his mind and told him everything he knew. The strongest one is called West. He's yellow, but he was born in the Confederate. His ability is metal skin. He can cover the surface of his skin with any metal he eats. Normal small caliber handguns are useless against him. The remaining 2 are Caucasians. Their hair is dyed white with a lot of braids. He's called Ryan. He can emit ultrasonic waves, mainly used for reconnaissance, but also to interfere with normal people. There's also a Caucasian with blonde hair. We call him Fast Gun. His hair is always combed neatly. He wears glasses. He's about 1.7 m tall, We don't know what his ability is, only that he never misses. He's once used a handgun to kill a target from 200 m away. I've never seen him miss a shot before. Then he told Li Onping the specific numbers of their abilities. Where do they live? Seeing that Jay was hesitating again, Li Onping picked up a stone and threw it at Jay's face. The Rose Hotel in the city center. The corners of Li Onping's mouth curled up, and he couldn't help but want to laugh out loud. He slowly crawled out from the darkness behind Jay, and his right hand slowly pressed against Jay's neck. Jay felt it. He suddenly struggled and shouted, "You said you'll let me go. I'll tell you everything. You said you'll let me go if I tell you." But before he could finish, Li Onping's right hand lightly squeezed. The black man stopped breathing, his neck tilted, and he died. You know it's impossible. Then, a surge of power came from Li Onping's right hand and entered his body. After a short 5 seconds, it disappeared. Li Onping raised his hand and clenched it into a fist. He could feel a surge of energy surging through his body. A strong sense of pleasure rose from his body. He had never felt that sucking a human soul could be so pleasurable. Ha ha ha, Black laughed. As expected, ability users are the most delicious food. Such a low-level ability user is equivalent to you eating a meal for 30 people. Black's words pulled Li Onping back from the pleasure of power. He looked at the black man who was no longer breathing and asked, "What's my current physical fitness?" "Strength 2. 6. Speed 2. 5. Stamina 3. 6. You've really given me a big gift, but the efficiency of improvement is slower than before." Li Onping asked. "Of course, as your physical fitness gets stronger, you'll need more and more souls to increase each attribute." The answer was not unexpected. Li Onping nodded. "Black, are you sure I'm level 0? Why do I feel that this J is very weak? Ability users aren't that hard to deal with." "If you didn't have the ability to regenerate, you would have been killed by him." Black shouted, "I think you're only level 0. The difference is too far. But if you can eat the remaining 3 ability users, there shouldn't be anyone in Central City who can stop you from taking revenge." What Li Onping didn't know was that Black didn't understand ability users at all. His understanding of the classification of ability users was also very partial. It was very careless to classify him as a level 0 mediocre player. In fact, Li Onping's battle performance had long surpassed level 0 ability users. It was just that he didn't know. Then, Black asked full of expectation, "Now that you know the address of those 3 ability users, their appearance, and their specific abilities, what do you plan to do?" "Humph," Li Onping laughed. "Of course I'll kill them before they move, and let them know their abilities and location in advance. It's not like it's some kind of physical strengthening ability. If they're ambushed, I think they're not much different from ordinary people. If I eat them, I won't have any scruples about killing Shangangwa." Chapter 21. Downtown, Rose Hotel Lobby. This old 5-star hotel had been in business for more than 60 years. Although it was no longer as dazzling as it used to be in the city center with many skyscrapers. But with its excellent service and user-friendly facilities, it still received a lot of praise and became the first choice for many people who came to the city for business, travel, or visit friends. In the lobby, Li Onping was half lying on the sofa with one hand as a pillow. Directly opposite him was the hotel elevator, with a total of 6 elevators. He had been here since 8 in the morning, looking at the people going in and out. No one knew what he was thinking. Ding! Another elevator door opened, and 3 men walked out. Li Onping's gaze froze as he stared intently at them. Then, he immediately looked away. "Don't worry, keep an eye on them. If they are aptitude users who have been fighting on the front line for a long time, you will easily attract their attention. Look at them from the corner of your eyes and confirm their identities." With Black's reminder, Li Onping slowly looked at the 3 people who walked out of the elevator. 2 were white, and 1 was yellow. Among the white people, one had a lot of braids, and the other wore glasses. His blonde hair was neatly combed. It should be them. Li Onping calmly followed them. West and the other 2 walked to the hotel door in parallel. West glanced at the great Xia people passing by, curled his lips, and said, "What a disgusting country. To think that it's still a feudal monarchy. Quick, How much longer are we going to waste here? Quick Gun said expressionlessly. In 1 or 2 years. By then, Shang Jinhai will officially become the branch director. He will find someone to replace us. Seems like there's a tail. Ryan, the white man, said calmly. I felt it when we came down from the elevator, but it's hidden very well. Let's pretend we didn't see it for now. Well, drive to a place with fewer people. If we can find it, we can kill it, Wes said casually. After that, the three of them walked out of the door. The hotel staff had already driven a car down and handed the key to Ryan. Seeing the three get in the car, Li Yonping also walked out of the hotel door, relying on his outstanding hearing. Although the voices of the three people just now were not loud, he had heard all of it, allowing him to confirm the other party's identity. How is it, Black? It's SOSO. I can only see a rough idea. Their strength and speed attributes should not be as high as yours. After all, they are not of the mutant type. But to be safe, it's best to see their movements. Understood. Li Yonping quickly walked out of the hotel and turned into an alley. Then, he climbed up the building in a few steps and took out a canister of natural gas that he had found in advance under a wooden plank on the roof. Then, he jumped along the rooftop and chased after the three people's car. Black's voice. Li Yonping had long been accustomed to Black's excitement. Every time he killed someone and sucked their soul, Black could not help but feel happy. He held the gas tank in his right hand and stared at the car shuttling through the streets. I'll follow them according to the plan. Now I'm more than 300 meters away. They shouldn't be able to sense my location. Wait until they get to a less crowded place. Don't hurt them by accident. Li Yonping decided on a distance of 300 meters based on Jay's description and after adding in some other distances. At this distance, they should not be able to sense his location and attack him. But he could easily follow them with his excellent eyesight and hearing. Hee. 3 aptitude users. Black's voice became more and more excited. Half an hour later, the cars on the road began to thin out. After a while, there were no cars or pedestrians within 100 meters. Ryan said in the driver's seat, I didn't feel any hostility from just now. There are no cars around, but I still feel like we're being watched. Wes nodded. Isn't a car? A flying aptitude user? Or some special ability? No, it doesn't even know basic stealth. I can't sense chi, but the killing intent is so obvious. It shouldn't be an aptitude user. Is it an illusion? But it can't be an illusion for all three of us. 300 meters away, the three of them didn't know that their conversation had been heard by Li Yonping with his excellent hearing. Li Yonping mumbled to himself. With the sonic wave man's ability, he shouldn't be able to sense me at this distance. But why does it sound like the three of them can sense that I'm following them? Could it be that someone else was following them? And killing intent, chi, and so on. It's also very suspicious. Lei Feng said, don't hesitate. Do it. I've saved up all the souls I've eaten for the past few days to heal myself. Even if I fail, I'll definitely be able to escape. Li Yonping looked at the car in the distance without saying a word. With my current physical fitness, I can't throw the gas tank on their car more than 300 meters away. So if I want to do it, I'll have to enter the sonic wave man's alert range. From the time I enter his alert range to the time I throw the gas tank on their car and it explodes, there will be about 2 to 3 seconds. It should work. Li Yonping's face turned solemn, and his entire body instantly expanded into a 2-meter-tall giant. The next moment, Ryan's face suddenly changed. Something's flying over. Within a second, Ryan and Fast Gun broke through the door and jumped out of the car on the 80 kilometers per hour highway. In the next second, a black shadow smashed into the front hood of the car. Wes just sneered and let the flames of the explosion cover him. After Fast Gun landed, he covered his head with both hands and rolled a few times. He immediately steadied himself and half knelt on the ground. Without hesitation, he pulled out his pistol and fired 3 shots at Li Yonping, who had jumped down from the roof, hitting him between the eyebrows, neck, and heart. The power of the bullets was far greater than that of an ordinary pistol, and a cloud of blood burst out of Li Yonping's body. But it couldn't stop Li Yonping from falling toward the wreckage of the exploded car. Looking at the body falling into the flames, Ryan walked behind Fast Gun and said with lingering fear, "This kind of method, Is the other party a terrorist organization? Is it one of the subordinates of the ancients? Fast Gun frowned and looked at the burning wreckage. Why hasn't West come out yet? He's just a sheet of iron, not an Iron Man. If he stays in this temperature for too long, he'll be burned. Maybe he found something? Ryan suddenly released a sonar probe and shouted, "No, he's not dead. West, Before Ryan finished his words, West's angry roars suddenly came from the wreckage of the car. But if one listened carefully, one would find that the roars seemed to contain endless pain. Fast Gun and Ryan looked at each other. Inside the burning carriage, Li Onping hugged West tightly. His body was covered in flames from head to toe, left to right, front to back. His entire body was covered with a faint layer of black. Looking at Li Onping, whose face was covered in blood, he shouted, "Madman! You madman! Do you want to die together? We'll be burned together." The burning pain of the flames made Li Onping's expression ferocious. The skin on his face curled up and became charred black, revealing his teeth. Compared to West, his pain was much more intense. West was like being heated in an iron box, while Li Onping's entire body was on fire, turning into ashes bit by bit. Looking at the madly struggling West, Li Onping just held him tightly and ignored his question. My bet was right. This guy has too much metal in his body, and he's too slow. There's no way he can escape in a second or two. Originally, he could have rushed out with his invulnerability. At most, he would have been scalded a little. But now that I've caught him, he'll turn into ashes. Li Onping was glad that West's reaction was as he had expected. Even if West could escape, he had other plans. But if he could kill the strongest person, the rest would be easy. In the flames, West struggled harder and harder. His body began to emit faint green smoke. Li Onping hugged him like he was hugging a furnace. "You're crazy, you're crazy." West felt that he couldn't break free from Li Onping's embrace. He screamed crazily. Suddenly, he looked at Li Onping's face. The originally curled skin slowly grew back, and the charred flesh fell from the face. In its place, new tender flesh grew again. But in a short while, they were all charred black by the flames. "Ah!" West yelled. How could he not understand? His opponent had a strong, self-healing ability. In this fire, he would be the one to die. But no matter how hard he tried, he still couldn't break free from his opponent's embrace. He kept kicking Li Onping's thighs and lower body with his knees, but his opponent's embrace still didn't budge. Ever since Li Onping started using his ability to cultivate, he had died countless times and suffered countless injuries in a short period of time. Pain was no longer an obstacle for him. Pain would only stimulate his potential. After another failed struggle, he looked at Li Onping's face that was reborn with a blank expression. West finally showed a look of despair. He stopped struggling and yelled, "Ultra-rapid regeneration." Li Onping's expression changed. He's sending a message to his companions. "Super strength." West continued to yell, but halfway through Li Onping headbutt him and he swallowed back his words. Just then, with a boom, the car exploded again, covering all the yelling and fighting sounds. Chapter 22. Li Onping waved his hand, and with a boom, a large piece of burning car wreckage flew in all directions. Li Onping walked out of the flames. In his other hand, West had become a charred corpse. The previous quick gun and Ryan had already disappeared. Li Onping was still wrapped in flames, and half of his face had been burned to the bone. Tilting his head, he walked toward the fire hydrant on the street. Did he escape, or did he want to attack me? Judging from the sound, he went north. Anyway, I'll put out the fire first. Feeling that there was no more energy coming from the corpse, Li Onping casually threw West's body on the ground, then raised his right foot and kicked the fire hydrant in front of him. With a bang, the fire hydrant was deformed and broken. Water sprayed out from the ground and poured over Li Onping's body. He felt a burst of coolness in his body, and at the same time, he felt the energy in his body surging. Ha! So much energy. This West is stronger than that black guy, and his soul energy is also more than that black guy's. Halfway through, Black yelled maliciously, "You don't care about the corpse on the ground? It's already cooked. Don't you want to taste it?" Liamping ignored him. Same old. Half to strengthen the body, and the other half to save. While talking, Liamping's burns had mostly healed, leaving only his hair, eyebrows, and other hairs that hadn't grown out. Are you sure you don't want hair? It's too ugly. Liamping curled his lips. This consumes human souls, human lives. I won't waste human lives on this kind of thing. What's my physical fitness now? Hee strength 2. 8 speed 2. 7 stamina 3. 8 and 2 more desserts. Let's go and eat them. Clenching his fist, Liamping felt that his strength had gone up another level. He looked to the north. Although he couldn't see, he could clearly hear Quick Gun and Ryan's breathing and footsteps. He could also hear their voices. Quick Gun, why did he run away? West was dead. He's dead. And you want us to run away with our tails between our legs? On the other side was Quickspear's methodical voice. The opponent can suppress Wester's metallized body in terms of strength and has a super strong self-healing ability. We have no chance of winning in close combat. Furthermore, with such a violent attack, it's hard to say whether or not the other party is alone. Considering that your ability isn't suitable for a direct confrontation, in the current situation, it's best for us to quickly retreat. Hearing this, Liamping sneered. With a loud noise under his feet, he disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only pieces of broken cement. Quick Gun and Ryan were running with all their might on the street. After reaching an intersection, Quick Gun pulled out his pistol and pointed it at the driver of a car on the side of the road. Get off the car. The driver raised his hands above his head with a look of panic on his face. Ryan had already opened the car door, grabbed the driver, and sat in the car himself. He's here, Ryan shouted as he started the car. Get in the car, what are you standing there for? Quick Gun looked at the other side of the street and saw a bald man with no eyebrows chasing after them at an unimaginable speed. When Ryan finished his sentence, he was already 100 meters away from the two of them. He's actually unscathed after the car explosion. This monstrous self-healing ability is... Thinking of this, Quick Gun shouted at Ryan, you go first. He's too fast. I'll stay and buy him some time. As he spoke, Quick Gun fired 2 shots at Liamping. Blood burst out from each of his legs, and he fell forward to the ground. However, Liamping did not seem to feel any pain. As he fell forward, he pushed against the ground with both hands and flew into the air. He flew up to a height of 5 to 6 meters before falling down. When he fell, the bullets in his legs had been squeezed out by the growing muscles. After taking a few steps, he ran toward the two of them again at high speed. Throughout the whole process, he did not stop moving. Seeing this, Quick Gun frowned even more. The bullets could still burst out a bloody mist on his body just now. Why is it so much weaker this time? And this self-healing ability, no, it should be the ability to regenerate. Hurry up and go find Shangangwa and arrange for the army, he shouted as he raised his gun again and shot at Liamping. This time his target was his eyes. Damn it, what kind of monster is this? Ryan also used sound waves to perceive Liamping's performance. His expression was as if he had seen a ghost. He stepped on the accelerator and the car rushed out like an arrow leaving the bow. Quick Gun's shooting skills were amazing. The bullets seemed to have eyes. No matter how Liamping turned left and right and ran in an S shape, he could not dodge them. Liamping felt a sharp pain in his eyes and lost his vision. He jumped to the right and broke through a small wall. Cement and lime flew everywhere. He had already broken into a house with a huge gust of wind. The residents in the house screamed and ran out of the house. At this time, after the gunshots rang out, the street was already in chaos. Inside the house, Liamping half knelt behind the wall. He covered his eyes with one hand and listened to the movements of the gunmen. However, he did not hear any footsteps. He only heard the sound of bullets being reloaded. He didn't take the opportunity to escape. It will take about 10 seconds for both my eyes to fully recover. The man with the sound waves escaped and left the gunman behind. Is he trying to delay me? While thinking, Liamping put his fingers into his eyes at the same time. With a little force, he squeezed in and pulled out the bullet. The heart-wrenching pain made him growl. I have to hurry up. The police will be here soon. At least I have to take care of the gunman. Then, let's recover one eye first. 5 seconds later, Li Onping's right eye regenerated first. He glanced at the messy room he had knocked into and walked to the door. He grabbed the door panel with both arms and pulled it down. Then, he rushed to the street with the door panel and ran in the direction of Quick Gun. Dong, 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 dong. Footsteps sounded. Li Onping held the door panel like a charging tank, rampaging on the street, knocking away all the parked cars and bicycles along the way. As a result, his current speed was not as fast as before, but it looked even more shocking. Only 5 seconds. This monster's regeneration speed is faster than I thought. Quick Gun looked at Li Onping, who was rushing at him like a beast. He retreated and raised his gun to shoot. The bullet passed through the door panel, but it could no longer hit Li Onping's eyes and stop him from moving forward. Damn it! If only Ryan was here. I would know his vital points. Li Onping didn't stop until he had fired all the bullets in the pistol. Seeing that Li Onping had run 50 meters away, Quick Gun immediately turned around and ran while changing bullets. But as soon as he changed bullets, he was discovered by Li Onping. He lifted the door panel, and there were more than a dozen bullet holes in his body, and blood kept coming out. Seeing Quick Gun turn around and run, Li Onping sneered, raised the door panel high above his head, and threw it at Quick Gun. Boom! The sound of something breaking through the air came from behind Quick Gun's head. Although he didn't know what it was, his body had already reacted before his brain. He rolled on the ground, avoided the door panel, then got up and ran forward without looking back. This rolling and crawling showed that Quick Gun was well trained. If it were someone else, he might have escaped, but such a pause was too long for Li Onping. With a stomp of his right foot, he appeared behind Quick's spear and grabbed him by the shoulder. Quick Gun's shoulder was restrained, and he knew that he couldn't beat his opponent in strength, so he turned around and pointed the gun at Li Onping's face. But in terms of close-range reaction speed, how could he compare with Li Onping, whose physical fitness had been strengthened time and time again? When he pulled the trigger, Li Onping had already tilted his neck and dodged the other party's muzzle. Bang! After a shot, Quick Gun still wanted to make a move, but he found that his strength was flowing away like a tide. He looked down and found that Li Onping's right hand was slowly pulling out from his chest. And with the other party's right hand, something seemed to be surging out of his body. Looking at Li Onping's expressionless face, he opened his mouth and wanted to say something. But when he opened his mouth, he just spat out mouthfuls of blood, but he couldn't say anything. Li Onping pulled out his right hand, looked at Quick Gun, who was slowly falling down in front of him, and sighed. He reached out and closed the other party's eyes. His ears twitched slightly, and he heard the alarm in the distance, getting closer and closer. Strength has reached 2. 9. Speed is 2. 8. And physical fitness is 3. 9. Black said regretfully. I thought that since this gunman was so troublesome, his ability should be very strong. In the end, his soul power is not even comparable to that Iron Man from before. That Sonic Man has escaped. Should I go after him? Of course. Li Onping jumped onto the street lamp, then jumped hard and jumped onto the roof of a 6-story building. He left a large dent in the street lamp. The street was a mess. 10 minutes later, the police arrived late and stared blankly at the unbelievable battlefield. Chapter 23. After receiving the news, Huang Linjun was the first to rush to the scene with his men. When he saw the surveillance footage on the road, he could not help but take a deep breath. This regenerative ability. What is this guy's background? A police officer next to him was also shocked when he saw this. What kind of monster is he? Did aliens invade Earth? Captain Huang, what should we do? This kind of monster, even if we know where he is, we won't be able to catch him. Huang Linjun said, inform the traffic police to tell them about the car that the white man took. Ask them to tell me where the white man went. I want to chase after him. The police officers looked at each other. They did not want to chase after this kind of unkillable monster. But Huang Linjun ignored them. As he walked into the car, he took out his phone and dialed a number. I'm Huang Linjun, the person in charge of Zhongdu City. Something uncontrollable has happened in Zhongdu City. According to the scene analysis, the threat of the target has exceeded the first level. I request for level E authority. A cold voice came from the phone. Understood. I'll give you level E authority. You'll be in charge of the scene coordination temporarily. We'll be there in 3 hours. Then, the phone's voice automatically transferred a few more calls. Level E authority confirmed. Requesting fire support. Request for air attack if necessary. Order the special forces to be in position. Enter Zhongdu City. After a few phone calls, everyone around them was silent. They looked to Huang Linjun in a daze, as if they had just met him. Everyone, this case ends here. What happens next is not something that you can interfere with. Thank you for your hard work during this period of cooperation. Also, don't forget to ask the traffic police to track the white man's location through the surveillance camera. Report to me every 5 minutes. After saying that, Huang Linjun got into the car alone. After the car started, he suddenly stuck his head out and shouted at Geng Zhong, who was in a daze. What are you doing? Get in the car. Me? Geng Zhong pointed at himself in surprise. Yes, it's you, Rook. Follow me and chase after them. At the same time, in Jiahua funeral parlor in the north of Zhongdu City, a funeral was about to be held. The deceased was named Shang Zhenbong, the second son of the mayor of Zhongdu City, Shang Anghua. The funeral this time was also unprecedentedly grand. Almost all the celebrities in the city consciously came, fearing that if they were not courteous enough, they would be hated by Shang Anghua, who was immersed in the pain of losing his son. In the resting room of the funeral parlor, Shang Anghua was sitting on a recliner with his eyes closed. His originally spirited face had become a lot more decadent in just a few days, and there was a lot more white hair. Su Lichuan stepped forward and said, "Big brother, my condolences." "Yes." Shang Anghua nodded without opening his eyes. "What's the matter?" "It's the mayor of Huaxi village in the suburbs. He seems to want to meet you because of the factory pollution. She had been waiting at the villa for the whole night. Today, he followed her to the funeral parlor." "Is it?" Shang Anghua frowned. "What's there to see? Don't you know what day it is today? You don't even know the rules. Tell him to go back to Flower Creek." "Yes." Su Lichuan bowed and left the room. But after a while, there was a burst of noise outside the door. Then, a middle-aged man with sparse hair and a bitter face rushed in. Behind him, several security guards and Su Lichuan followed closely. "Mayor Shang, more than 200 people in Huaxi village are waiting for Maine. Please let me finish my words." The middle-aged man knelt down as soon as he entered the resting room and cried out to Shang Anghua. The security guard behind him grabbed his arm and pulled him from behind, but they couldn't stop him from crying. Shang Anghua frowned and finally opened his eyes. He waved his hand and dismissed the 2 security guards. "You can go," he said to the middle-aged man, kneeling on the ground with a pleasant expression. "Old Wang, why are you kneeling? There's nothing in the world that can't be solved. Get up and talk. I didn't know you were outside just now." The security guards were afraid that people would disturb me, so they didn't let people in. Don't blame them. "Mayor Shang, I know I'm wrong today, but I really have no choice." Old Wang was still kneeling on the ground and didn't get up. "I really couldn't find you. When I went to the city government, they always said you weren't there. When I went to the Blue Sea Ark, I was caught by the security guards before I even got close to the house. Mayor Shang, it was you who introduced Star International to us, so we agreed to let them open a factory. But what they discharge is poison. There's not even a fish in the river now. Until the day before yesterday, the crops in the fields have withered and died, and many children are sick. Mayor, this matter really can't be dragged on. You can't leave it alone." Shang Anghua raised his eyebrows and said slowly, "Last time, didn't you sign a contract with Star International to let them discharge into the river? They seem to have given you a lot of compensation. They said it's not poisonous, but now the adults and children in the county are sick. I want to close the factory, but they say it's your special approval. I've looked for all the leaders in the city, but no one cares." Old Wang shouted and kowtowed. "Mayor, I beg you. The entire Huaxi village relies on farming to survive. Now, not only are we unable to do it, but people are also sick. We can't hold on anymore. And I understand." Shang Anghua nodded seriously and said, "This matter is very serious. I will communicate with Star International. Don't worry, Old Wang. Let the villagers rest assured. I will give them an explanation." Thank you, Mayor." You're really a righteous man. At that moment, Shang Angua and Su Lichuan comforted old Wang with a few words with a kind face and sent him to the door of the lounge. But as soon as he turned around, Shang Angua's face sank. What are you doing? If this kind of thing is reported to the higher-ups, it will make me very passive. Su Lichuan quickly explained, maybe the people who were sent lowered the price. I'll send people again, and each person will give 100,000 yuan. I guarantee that no one will care about this matter anymore. Shang Angua sighed. Star International was introduced by Zhenhai. It's a big international company. This year, they invested a total of 1 billion in Zhongdu for this sewage discharge factory. My results in attracting investment this year, and the report to Beijing at the end of the year, all depend on them, you know? Big brother, I understand. Su Lichuan asked again, but that old Wang is a bit stubborn. He refused to accept the money and brought a group of people to oppose the sewage discharge factory. Last time, he was about to be exposed on TV. Fortunately, I stopped him. If this goes on, it will be a bit difficult for me. It seems that he has been in Huaxi for too long, and his brain is not very bright. Shang Angua said, well, isn't the city preparing to send a group of cadres to support the Northwest? Let's bring him along. Su Lichuan was surprised. But old Wang is already more than 50 years old. Shang Angua smiled and said, it's not too late to serve the country and the people. He's so upright and plain-spoken. Let him go to the Northwest to train. Although Shang Angua was smiling, Su Lichuan felt a chill down his spine. The Northwest was more than just bitter cold. It was located at the border, bordering the ice fortress, and there were constant wars all year round. There were also many international terrorist organizations appearing and disappearing. It was a place that none of the officials were willing to go to even if they were beaten to death. It could be considered the most dangerous place in the entire Great Xia, where all sorts of officials were exiled. Old Wang will not be able to return to Dedu in his old age. Thinking of this, Su Lichuan lowered his head even more. By the way, is Shirshir not here yet? Shang Angua asked. Why is she not here yet? She's pregnant. Did something happen to her? She should be fine. Maybe she is too sad. Let me call and ask. Su Lichuan took out his phone and dialed Wei Shirshir's number. But the phone was turned off. What happened? Lichuan, send someone to check on her. I will go to the auditorium first. Outside the funeral parlor, because there was no more space in the parking lot, both sides of the street were already filled with cars. They were all luxury cars that cost millions. If you drove an ordinary car that cost more than 100,000 yuan, you would be embarrassed to park here. The passers-by were secretly shocked. Who was so extravagant? However, the road outside the funeral parlor was not wide to begin with. Now that both sides of the road were occupied, it caused a serious traffic jam. Li Qian was on the street at this time. Looking at the rows of cars, she could not help but sigh. It is just like a car show. She raised her phone and took pictures of the cars parked on both sides of the street. She also saw many license plates of the military, the government, the airlines, and many other departments. Halfway through taking pictures, she suddenly heard quarreling in front of her. Seeing that more and more people were gathering, Li Qian also went up and squeezed into the crowd with her phone. Why did you park your car? This is too much. Can't you see that the road is blocked? That's right. Why did you park your car here? I still have to rush to the airport. How can we get there if the road is blocked? Li Qian looked over and saw that it was a bus blocking the entrance of the street. It did not allow cars to pass by the funeral parlor. From time to time, drivers came down and ran to the front of the bus to curse. More and more people gathered. The cars in the back kept honking, and the sound came one after another. The driver of the bus got down from the driver's seat and pointed at the cursing drivers. The funeral parlor is blocking the road today. All of you take a detour. This made the crowd even more agitated. Many drivers cursed, but that person ignored them and went back to the bus, allowing the drivers to complain in front of the bus. In the end, with a bang, a small car crashed into the bus. It turned out that someone wanted to drive through the gap left by the bus, but they collided with the bus's parking space. This made the bus driver anxious. He jumped out of the car and shouted at the driver who crashed into him. Do you want to die? Do you know who is holding a funeral? F***CK. How dare you crash into my car? Pay up. Don't think of leaving without paying up. Seeing the collision, a few security guards in black suits and sunglasses ran out of the funeral parlor. They opened the door and dragged the driver out, beating him black and blue. It was as if gunpowder had been ignited. A few drivers who were blocked rushed over and pushed and shoved the security guards. It looked like a fight was about to break out. Fortunately, someone had called the police beforehand. The traffic police arrived and stopped the two parties. However, the traffic police advised the security guards to move the bus and let the cars pass, but the other party ignored them. Don't even think about it. Let me tell you, don't think you're so great just because you're a police officer. Your leaders are in the hall today. Before he finished speaking, Su Lichuan had already walked over with a few traffic police leaders. What's going on? What day is it today? Why are you causing trouble? Su Lichuan shouted at the security guards. All of you go back. How can you beat people up? With that said, he took out a few thousand yuan and gave it to the beaten driver. I won't pursue the matter of your collision. This money is for your medical expenses. Take it. The traffic police leader behind him also stood up and ordered the traffic police who had rushed to the scene. Which brigade are you from? There's an event at the city hall today. They want to block the road. Quickly get all the cars out. Don't block the exit. Since the traffic police leader had spoken, the drivers present were even more helpless. It was worth it to back out one by one. However, cars kept rushing in from outside. With this, the cars were blocked hundreds of meters away. The traffic police on duty were sweating profusely. Li Qian sneered secretly. Seeing Su Lichuan and the others walk back, she raised the phone in her hand and took a picture of the scene. Chapter 24. Inside the auditorium, more than 100 men and women were attending the funeral. As the elites of Central City, each and every one of them had a huge impact on the city. They either held hundreds of millions of wealth or were in charge of powerful forces. At this moment, they were gathered here because the main character of the funeral was called Shang Zhenbong, the son of Shang Anghua, the most powerful man in Central City. Men and women gathered in twos and threes, chatting with each other. For them, this funeral was a rare exchange gathering. Only Shang Anghua was able to gather so many powerful people in Central City. The two brothers, Hua Qing and Hua Fei, stood alone in the corner of the auditorium, looking out of place with the atmosphere of the entire auditorium. Hua Fei's expression became more and more disdainful as he looked at the men and women chatting around him and listened to their words such as investment, return, yachts, and golf. Hua Qing chuckled upon seeing his expression. Don't look down on them, little Fei. Do you think you can kill all the people in this auditorium by yourself? That's right, but fighting and killing won't solve the problem. If you kill any one of them, our entire gang will be annihilated the next day. On the contrary, if they want to deal with you, they only need to open their mouths. There's no risk at all. Remember, those who are brave and ruthless and rely on their abilities and skills are nothing but the anger of an ignorant man. They will never be able to compare with the power brought by power and money. The anger of an ignorant man will splash blood in 5 steps. The anger of the Son of Heaven will cause millions of corpses to fall. Which one do you think is more powerful? Hua Fei was silent for a moment and then coldly said, I know, but I just can't stand their hypocrisy and hypocrisy. Saying one thing and doing another. It's really disgusting. Lies and hypocrisy are the best lubricants in this world. Without them, the order of the entire human society will collapse in less than 3 days. Hua Qing was halfway through his speech when he suddenly turned his head thoughtfully and found that Hua Fei had disappeared. He smiled and waved to several men at the side and then walked over. Long time no see, Director Wan. On the other side, Anna and a middle-aged woman were also in the auditorium. The middle-aged woman next to her raised her eyebrows, and her hair was tied up high. She was a powerful woman who acted swiftly and decisively. The woman's skin also looked very delicate. She must have spent a lot of time and money to maintain her skin. Her face was vaguely similar to Anna, but she was Anna's mother, Lu Qian. At this moment, she was talking loudly with a few ladies, while Anna stood obediently at the side, not saying a word. She had been knocked unconscious by Wolf at the hospital and suffered a mild concussion. She had been hospitalized ever since. During this period, the police also came to take a statement, but they were all blocked by her mother. Ching, your daughter is so cute. I heard that she's studying finance at Tianjin University. Are you planning to let him inherit your husband's company in the future? Hee. Ching laughed. Your girl. Why do you need to run a company? I was hoping that she would settle down and find a rich husband to marry. That's why I brought her here today, so that she won't hang out with her college friends. Hee. Everyone is young once in a while. Another lady said, Nana, look over there. The son of the Liu family has inherited his family's shipping business at such a young age. He's young and promising. The one next to him is the second son of the Fan family. He has a master's degree in law from studying in the Yamaster Federation. He's coming back this year to inherit his family's import and export business. And the one on the left is the son of director, one of the Public Security Bureau. I heard that he's also studying at Tianjin University. He's Nana's schoolmate. Anna's face turned ugly when she heard the conversation between her mother and the ladies. She felt more and more disgusted. Xiao Qingqing saw Anna's expression and frowned. After the ladies left, she began to lecture Anna. Nana, what's wrong with you? I brought you here to meet the upper-class society of Zhongdu and broaden your horizons. Don't give me that ugly face. This isn't your home. Everyone is waiting for you. Anna knew that her mother hadn't cared about her for the past few years. She wanted her to find a rich man and marry him as a tool for the family's marriage alliance. This was something she absolutely didn't want to agree to. She knew that if she didn't resist at this time, it would be too late when it was settled. So she gathered her courage and said, Mom, you didn't care about me since I was a child. Why are you controlling me now that I'm older? I have someone I like. I don't need you to arrange it. After listening to Anna's words, Xiao Qingqing's face turned even uglier. She was used to having everything in her hands. What she couldn't stand the most was someone in the family opposing her arrangements. Several guests on the side saw the two quarreling and secretly pricked up their ears, ready to watch a good show. They knew that Lu Qian was a powerful woman. When she was in her 20s, she married Anna's father, who was already in his 50s. After giving birth to Anna, she threw herself into the upper-class society, relying on her sharp teeth and long sleeves. In today's circle of rich people in Zhongdu, everyone would give her some face. Anna's father's company was getting bigger and bigger, and this woman had some part to play in it. Good. Lu Qian's face darkened. She whispered to Anna, I still don't know who you like? That Liangping died a long time ago. Even if he didn't die, he would end up as a fugitive. I'll take you to see a few young masters later. They are all real dragons and phoenixes among men. Today is the beginning of you stepping into the upper-class society. Don't make trouble for me later. Do you understand? If you don't perform well, I'll let your father teach you a lesson. I'm not going. Anna turned her head and ignored Lu Qian. Mom, you didn't care about me before. Now, don't care about me. Well, you've grown up, haven't you? Yi Qian's face became darker and darker. Her eyes narrowed slightly. It was a little scary. Are you going or not? Anna exhaled. Although she was overwhelmed by her mother's aura, she kept her head down and didn't answer. Good. I'll teach you a lesson when I get back. Lu Qian looked around. Apparently, she didn't want to quarrel with her daughter here. That would be too embarrassing. Aunt Lu, long time no see. Who is this? At that moment, a young man in a suit with an extraordinary temperament walked toward Lu Qian and her daughter. This person walked with a majestic gait, and his figure was slender and powerful. At a glance, one could tell that he came from an extraordinary background. Moreover, he wasn't an ordinary second-generation heir who relied on his parents. He was a rich young master with his own ideals and ambitions. This is my daughter, Nana. Lu Qian covered her mouth and laughed. She didn't look unhappy at all. Showing her proficiency in social skills, she pointed at the young man and said, Nana, this is Lawyer Su's son, young Master Quan. He just came back from the capital and started his own supermarket chain. In just a year, his assets exceeded 200 million. He's definitely young and promising. Aunt Lu, you flatter me. There are so many young talents here today. How could it be my turn? It's a pity that Jimbong left too early. Sigh. Back then, he also played with me since we were young. At this point, the two of them had a moment of silence. Then, the man called young Master Quan looked at Anna with a glimmer of light in his eyes. Miss Nana is indeed Aunt Lu's daughter. She's even more beautiful than the rumors say. Aunt Lu, when you and your daughter stand together today, all the other female guests are inferior. Young Master Quan, you flatter me. Nana hasn't graduated yet. She's still a little girl. I brought her here today to see what the upper class looks like. Both of you are young, so you should get closer. If Nana can learn a little from young Master Quan, she'll benefit a lot. Hearing the conversation between the two, Anna's face became colder and colder. Young Master Quan saw Anna's expression, but the corner of his mouth curled up. He reached out his hand to Anna, Su Quan, AC Group's chairman. Nana, when are you going to graduate? Do you want to come to our group for an internship? No matter how much you learn in school, it's better to personally experience it. I was the same in the past. Su Quan's words were full of confidence. He was not more than 27 or 28 years old, but he already owned a company with a market value of more than 100 million. Compared to other second-generation heirs who relied on inheriting their father's business, it was impossible for him to have such strong confidence. Of course, he wouldn't calculate how much his father, Su Li Chuan, helped his company. For ordinary women, he only needed to hook his finger to get them to go to bed. Anna's abnormal behavior in front of him aroused his interest. Seeing Su Quan's hand in front of her eyes, Anna frowned deeply. In her heart, she despised second-generation heirs like him the most. Relying on their family's wealth and power, they did well regardless of whether they were in the official circle or started a company. But in their bones, they were full of a condescending confidence. They especially looked down on ordinary people. They usually appear to be elegant, but once they tore off their mask, they were more vicious than the fiercest jackals and wolves. When young Master Quan first entered the retail business in the central city, who knew how many shops were forced to go bankrupt and jump off buildings because of him? It was only because of his father and the power of the mayor that he could monopolize and compete with others that the company could develop so well in such a short time. Lu Qian kept winking at Anna, but Anna didn't respond at all. It made Su Quan, who reached out his hand, feel very awkward. At this moment, the door of the auditorium opened. Chapter 25. Huang Linjun drove the police car at high speed and passed through several red lights. As he drove, he made phone calls to keep in touch with the traffic police, the task force, and the army. Hello, is this Mayor Shang? I am the leader of the 115 task force, Huang Linjun Carrot. Yes, I know. However, there's a very dangerous criminal with superpowers heading towards Jiahua Funeral Parlor. For your safety, I hope you can evacuate from there immediately. I understand. My condolences, but that criminal, before he could finish his sentence, the other side had already hung up. Hello. Huang Linjun called again, but the call was already hung up. He couldn't help but curse. These bureaucrats don't know the destructive power of ability users at all. Geng Zhong glanced at him and then turned his head away. He looked like he wanted to say something, but didn't. Huang Linjun was originally a peripheral figure in the city police department. Although he had a lot of experience and a high rank, he had never solved any cases. This time, one had sent him to lead the 115 task force. To be honest, even Geng Zhong, a newcomer, had some speculations. But now, Huang Linjun's performance had completely solved his previous doubts. The other side could actually directly contact the army and mobilize the special forces. His power was completely beyond his expectations. Huang Linjun glanced at him and blasted the horn as he ran through a red light. What's wrong? You're wondering why I called you over? Geng Zhong's mind was filled with thoughts. There were simply too many things that he felt strange about and questioned. About the mobilization of the army, about the first energy level E authority, and that criminal with superpowers. What exactly was it? As if he knew what Geng Zhong was thinking, he smiled at him. I know you have a lot of things that you want to know, but I can only tell you now. That criminal with superpowers is very dangerous. Whether it's his personality, or his ability. So we're going to stop him now. If you want to back out now, it's not too late. Gung Zhong thought about it and finally said, "Why? You saw how dangerous the suspect is, right? And you should have called the special forces just now, right? Why do you still want to care about this matter in this situation? This has nothing to do with us police anymore, right?" Huang Linjun sighed, but the speed of the car didn't slow down at all. It showed his strong psychological ability and superb driving skills. Do you think that all the people he killed deserve to die? They deserve to die. Let's not talk about the other kidnappers and murderers. It's that Shang Zhenbang. Last month, I saw with my own eyes that he framed a university student who acted bravely for a just cause into a rapist that everyone wants to beat up. Do you know how useless I felt at that time? That was the first time I felt that the police uniform didn't just give me power, it also bound me. You know what? Next, he beat up a traffic policeman until he was in a vegetative state. When I heard the news, I felt like I was the one who harmed him. If he had been arrested after the rape, there would have been no other victims. After that, I couldn't wait to shoot that bastard every day. So, you think the existence of a suspect is reasonable? To tell you the truth, I did think about it. Gung Zhong laughed self-deprecatingly. Sometimes, I even feel that he does things that we police should do, but can't. We might not be able to complete his weekly workload in a year. Killing people is wrong, Huang Linjun said seriously. No matter how righteous or sufficient the reason is, once he starts killing people for personal reasons, he has already committed a crime. Trying to use crime to stop crime is a fallacy in itself. And for a suspect who puts this kind of behavior into practice, his thoughts are undoubtedly extremely dangerous. Have you ever thought about it? Once this kind of thing is exposed, how many people will learn to be chivalrous and heroic and do the same thing as him? Although his starting point is good, the result is only terror and turmoil. What society needs is stability and development, not the terror of individual heroism. I definitely won't let a criminal like him go. Gung Zhong's expression froze. He didn't think about it that way. Huang Linjun continued. But this time, he's dead for sure. The military's special forces have experience dealing with criminals with superpowers. He's only a first-level rookie. What's waiting for him is only endless imprisonment until his ability and body are thoroughly studied. Then he'll silently die in some corner. Gung Zhong was speechless. Although he already knew that this was the result of going against the state, he still felt that it was a pity. The people in power are all corpses, and the incompetent people rely on their connections and background to occupy important positions. Times are developing, technology is advancing, but there is less and less space for everyone. Since birth, everyone has been walking along an invisible line. The group of people at the top of the pyramid dominated 80% of the entire society. The power of 1 million poor people can't compare to a rich person. So money became the religion of everything. The power of an individual is infinitely small, and those who dare to go against the flow will eventually be crushed into powder. Maybe this is not the era of heroes. Gung Zhong sighed. Ridiculous. Shang Anghua hung up the phone. His face was full of displeasure. He said to Su Lichuan behind him, "This Huang Linjun, you go back and ask one to arrange for him to be transferred away. I don't want to see him again. Humph, he thinks he's so great just because he has some ability. He actually wants me to cancel today's funeral. How stupid." After saying that, he seemed to still feel disdain and shook his head. Su Lichuan behind him didn't reply. He just silently remembered Shang Anghua's words. He knew that Shang Anghua didn't need to answer at this time. He was just venting his emotions. Huang Linjun just happened to bump into the gun. However, the other party actually bumped into him when Shang Anghua was mourning the loss of his son. He really didn't know what to do. Shang Anghua's words meant that no matter where one had transferred him, his official career in this life would come to an end. Other than Su Lichuan, there were more than 10 security guards behind Shang Anghua. They were all retired special forces that had been recruited by Shang Anghua over the years to form the Shang family's own security force. Last time, Shang Zhenbang had an ability user to protect him, so he didn't let these special forces follow him. Now, it seemed that these special forces were more reliable than any ability user. Therefore, he didn't let Wester and the others protect him. In Shangang's opinion, ability users couldn't compare to people and guns. Who cared if he could control oxygen and have 100% accuracy? As long as he had a dozen people and a dozen guns, he could directly shoot you to death. Even if you were invulnerable, pistols wouldn't work and machine guns wouldn't work, but there were still rocket launchers. Humph, don't you know what era we are in? Still playing this game with me. Ridiculous. He turned to Su Lichuan and ordered, send half of the security guards out. If anyone dares to come and cause trouble at this time, don't be merciful, just arrest them. Understood. Su Lichuan quickly turned to the security captain and ordered. Shang Anghua turned a corner, pushed open the door, and walked into the auditorium. When the door opened, whether it was Hua Qing, Hua Fei, Anna, Lu Qian, or Su Quan, everyone in the auditorium unconsciously stopped talking and looked over. Under everyone's gaze, Shang Anghua walked in. Among these gazes, there was envy, jealousy, yearning, and worship. But there was one thing that was the same, and that was awe. Shang Anghua was very satisfied with this situation. It let him know that his control over the city hadn't decreased. He casually waved his hand and motioned for everyone to continue. But even if everyone's conversation continued, the center of the auditorium, whether intentionally or not, leaned towards Shang Anghua. Immediately, some middle-aged and old men leaned towards Shang Anghua. They included the deputy mayor, Chief Wan, and some cadres, and some representatives of big families. They were all second only to Shang Anghua in the auditorium. After Shang Anghua had contacted them, it was the turn of other people who were one level lower. Layer by layer, this was the unspoken rule of the gathering in the city. Su Quan looked at Shang Anghua, who was surrounded by the crowd, and said with yearning, Mayor Shang is really a hero of his generation. If it weren't for his guidance in the past few years, the city would never have developed as well as it does now. I wish I could have half of Mayor Shang's achievements in my life. Lu Qian also sighed, yes, if a person can get to this point, their life would be worth it. Unfortunately, the murderer of Zhenbang has not been caught yet. This kind of madman who kills people at will and destroys the peace of the people. I really can't figure out how someone could be so cruel. Su Quan heard it and couldn't help but show off the news he just got. Aunt Lu, you don't have to worry. I heard from my dad that Mayor Su not only set up a special task force, but also mobilized some of his friends. The suspect will be caught soon. Oh, that's good. Lu Qian patted her chest and said, I didn't dare to go shopping these days. I heard that there are several new clothes in winter. I haven't had time to buy them yet. Looking at Su Quan's proud expression, Anna couldn't help but mock. The murderer has been caught for a few weeks. I heard that he first escaped from the encirclement of the armed police from a bar. I don't think ordinary police can catch him. Nana, there's something you don't know. Su Quan looked at Anna with a mysterious expression. In this world, there are many supernatural things. There are also a lot of people with special abilities. The friends invited by Mayor Shang this time are such people. This suspect may have been caught by the mayor, but I think he would rather be caught by the police. Lu Qian on the side also agreed, thinking that she heard some secret news. She thought that Su Lichuan was indeed Shang Anghua's confidant. His son knew so many secrets. As long as he had this relationship with his father, he would definitely have a meteoric rise in his life. At this time, Shang Anghua had already walked to the podium. The funeral was officially about to begin. Chapter 26. On the podium, Shang Anghua's face was calm. He took out the script he had written in advance and began to speak. Shang Jinbang, my son, on the street, Ryan desperately stepped on the accelerator. He glanced at the rearview mirror, and his eyes instantly shrank. Lianping's demon-like figure was slowly emerging. He has been smart, lovely, kind, and honest since he was a child. Everyone in the audience looked solemn. The car that Ryan was driving was like a fish shuttling through the traffic, always able to snatch the lane by a hair's breadth. However, no matter how fast Ryan drove, the figure in the rearview mirror was still lingering around. The past is vague, and tears are hazy. Thousands of words can't express our longing for him. Ryan stepped on the accelerator, and the car went faster and faster. However, he still couldn't get rid of Li Anping's shadow. When he turned another corner, he saw a long line of cars that was hundreds of meters long in front of him. It gradually enlarged in his eyes. To his friends, he was heroic. To his colleagues, he worked hard without complaint and was selfless. To his parents, he was meticulous and always grateful. As he read, Shang Angwa's eyes gradually turned red. Ryan stepped on the brakes, but it was too late to stop. Seeing that he was about to hit the back of the car in front of him, he jerked the steering wheel, and finally the whole car rolled to the side of the road. At this moment, friends are sad, relatives are covering their faces, colleagues are choking. We don't want to believe, and we can't believe this heavy truth. The car hit the guardrail and rolled into the flower bed on the street. Ryan's forehead was full of blood. He unfastened his seatbelt and hurriedly climbed out. Looking back, Li Anping was slowly coming from the street corner. He quickly got up and stumbled toward the door of the funeral home. My wife lost a good husband. My parents lost a filial son. My friends lost a good brother. Shang Angwa's voice gradually choked, and gradually, some people in the audience couldn't help but cry. When they saw Ryan rushing to the funeral home with his face full of blood, the driver of the bus and several security guards at the door stopped him and asked him to stop. Stop! Who are you? Idiot, don't block me. Behind you. When the security guards at the door closed their eyes, the last thing they saw was blood and screaming people. Among the panicking crowd, only Li Qian did not move a single step. Her eyes were fixed on Li Anping, who was wantonly slaughtering. It was exactly the same as the figure in her video. At this moment, the other party looked like a demon king, but in her eyes, he had become an indomitable hero who fought against the rich and powerful. Li Qian's eyes were full of splendor. Her gaze was filled with worship, as if she was a saint praying to God. The road to heaven is long. I wish you a safe journey. In the auditorium, Shang Angwa's eyes were filled with tears as he was helped down by Su Lichuan. Then, everyone bowed 3 times to Shang Zhenbang's portrait. Outside the auditorium, a white man staggered to the door. His eyes were wide open and filled with fear. Just as he was about to push the door open, a hand grabbed him from the back of his head, clamped his head, and pulled him back. Save! Before he could utter a single word, his mouth was covered by the other hand of the person behind him. All that was left was a whimper. Save me. Someone save me. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Ryan's eyes were fixed on the door, but the door of the auditorium was getting farther and farther away from him. His body seemed to be grabbed by the devil and dragged to hell, sinking into the darkness forever. A few seconds later, he closed his eyes forever. With a creak, the door of the auditorium was opened. Everyone could not help but look at the door behind them. They saw a bald man more than 2 meters tall walk in. His upper body was naked, and his trousers were almost torn into pieces. There were many bloodstains on his body, as if he had just come out of a slaughterhouse. Facing the puzzled eyes of the crowd, he looked up at the portrait in the auditorium and showed a cruel smile. Who is Shang Angwa? And Wei Shishir, where is she? Seeing that someone interrupted the funeral and called him and his wife, Shang Angwa's face became more and more gloomy. Shang Angwa's face became more and more ugly. When Su Lichuan saw this, he immediately wanted to stand up, but he found that his son had already stood up. He secretly nodded in his heart. Su Quan pointed at Li Anping and said righteously, "Is this an auditorium? Do you know whose funeral is being held here today? Please leave immediately." As he spoke, he walked in front of Li Anping and was about to push him out. At the same time, a few other men came to their senses. Huaqing looked at the bloodstains on Li Anping's body, and a trace of surprise flashed through his eyes. He said playfully, "Haha, young people these days really don't know any better." Beside him, Wan said like an old man, "What's wrong with the security outside? Why did they let someone in?" Su Quan pushed Li Anping, but found that he did not move. Then he felt his wrist being grabbed by the other party. "Hey, what are you doing? Let go of me." Halfway through his words, his voice had turned into a scream. Su Quan knelt on the ground, his face full of tears and snot. and he screamed heartbreakingly. When Li Onping released his hand, his wrist had been squeezed into a ball, and one of his hands was crippled. This scene made everyone shudder with fear. Everyone stared at Li Onping without blinking. Men and women were all in a clamor. Anna was also stunned. She did not expect that the young master of a wealthy family, who was still awe-inspiring just a moment ago, would have one of his hands crippled and be lying on the ground crying. "Who are you?" Su Lichuan looked at Li Onping with reddened eyes, and his hands trembled with anger. Su Quan was his best and most beloved son. He had a successful career at a young age, and he had been training him as his future successor. Now, one of his hands was crippled, and he had an impulse to go crazy. "Catch him!" A few black-robed men rushed out from the crowd and pounced on Li Onping. Li Onping flashed on the spot and circled around the crowd. Those black-robed men fell to the ground before they could reach him. Not a single wound could be seen on their bodies. Their souls were all sucked away by Li Onping. When people came to their senses, they could only see that several men in black fell to the ground, and Li Onping was still standing in the same place, as if he had not moved. Suddenly, he frowned and looked at Wan and sighed. There was a policeman there who reached into his pocket and was about to take out his gun. When he was halfway through taking out his gun, Li Onping put his hand on his forehead. His eyes rolled, and he fell down softly. This scene made Wanin, who was standing on the side, scared out of his wits. He looked at Li Onping as if he was looking at a monster. After killing another person, Li Onping glanced at the surroundings and said indifferently, "I'll kill whoever moves." These 4 words were like a cold Siberian wind blowing on everyone's faces, and all of a sudden, all the people who were ready to move stopped. But all the people present were the top figures in the upper class of Zhongdu, and many of them had seen great storms and waves. It was impossible for them to accept Li Onping's words, just because he killed a few people. In particular, Su Lichuan's eyes were almost spitting fire. He pointed at Li Onping and shouted, "Lawless! How dare you kill people in broad daylight? You're simply lawless. Someone come! Someone come!" Li Onping looked at Su Lichuan's face and narrowed his eyes. "I seem to know you. I'm Su Lichuan from G-Min Law Firm. Here's 1 million. It was too dark at that time, and you didn't see what the person looked like. But after you found out that the car owner was Shang Jinbong, you thought it was him. In fact, after thinking about it, that person didn't look like Shang Jinbong. You can say so." "Su Lichuan?" Li Onping walked over quickly, and the security guards who came up to stop him were sent flying with a few punches and kicks. He grabbed Su Lichuan's collar and pulled him up. "Don't you recognize me? You came to the hospital on behalf of the mayor to find me. Don't you remember? Who are you? Let me go." Li Onping laughed. Regardless of the other party's struggle, he grabbed Su Lichuan's neck and lifted him up like a chicken. Looking at the other party's livid face, he smiled and pointed to the people around him and asked, "Tell me which one of them is Shang Anghua, and I'll give you a quick death." But with his current grip, how could Su Lichuan speak with his neck gripped? His eyes protruded as he stared at Li Onping, as if he wanted to say something. But Li Onping just slightly increased the strength of his palm. With a click, Su Lichuan's neck was crooked, and he was dead. There was a burst of exclamations. No one thought that Li Onping would really kill Su Lichuan. A large space immediately emptied around him. Someone immediately called the police, and some people walked to the door to escape. Shang Anghua, who had been standing beside Su Lichuan, also quietly retreated to the crowd. Some people in the crowd looked at Shang Anghua, but didn't speak. Li Onping threw Su Lichuan's body on the ground. He took a step and jumped more than 10 meters. After a few more steps, he came to the door and stood in front of everyone. "If you don't hand over Shang Anghua, none of you can leave." Li Onping stood in front of the door and looked at the panicked crowd, shouting, "I don't want to do it, but if you don't hand over Shang Anghua, I'll have to kill all of you before the police arrive. You better not have any ideas. You see my methods. I've already subdued all the security guards outside, and I can kill all the people in this auditorium by myself. So your only way out is to hand over Shang Anghua." After hearing Li Onping's words, a few people immediately looked at Shang Anghua, who was hiding behind the crowd. But many people also felt angry. "Do you know who is here today?" You've already killed Su Lichuan. You'll die if you go out. In the crowd, a trace of anger flashed across Huo Qing's face. He said like an old man, "Young man, don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you have some skills. This society is not about who has the biggest fist." Liangping squinted at him and asked, "Who are you?" "I'm Huo Qing." Liangping turned his head, looked at him carefully, and then laughed. Chapter 27. I have a question that I have been wanting to ask for a long time. Will I still die? Die. Have you ever thought that perhaps when you received my power, the real Liangping had already died? You are nothing but the resentment and hatred he left behind. As long as you have enough energy to regenerate, you will not die. Even if you really die, it is only temporary. Nonsense. A few soldiers in chemical protective suits carefully walked to the gate and surrounded Liangping's broken body. They wanted to freeze Liangping's body first, then wrap it up and transport it out. Every ability user, especially those with mutated bodies, was the focus of the government's research material. The soldiers in front looked at Liangping's body curiously, and their eyes suddenly showed a look of disbelief. They found that Liangping's body was actually squirming, especially the huge hole in his chest. The muscles, blood vessels, and nerves under the neck squeezed out bit by bit, reconstructing Liangping's chest. In the hole, a thumb-sized heart could be seen growing out of the blood vessels and slowly beating. Suddenly, the eyes of the body suddenly opened wide, and one of his hands grabbed the neck of a soldier and threw him out. "He is still alive. Let's go." Liangping stood up. In front of him were the soldiers in chemical suits who were fleeing in panic, the special forces soldiers who were waiting with firearms, and a sharpshooter who was aiming at him with a sniper rifle from 400 meters away. The police in the command car stared at him on the screen and gritted their teeth. The dignitaries heard the gunshots and hid in the auditorium, trembling. Geng Zhong looked at Liangping on the screen with his mouth wide open. Huang Linjun clenched his fists and couldn't stop shaking. The pervasive killing intent seemed to fill Liangping's body. At this moment, the soldiers wanted to kill him, the police wanted to kill him, and the dignitaries wanted to kill him. Everyone wanted Liangping to die. Kill this youngster who broke the rules. Shoot this criminal who killed countless people. Kill this extremely dangerous ability user. At this moment, the young man was going to fight against the entire world. He roared angrily. "Why do you want to kill me?" A soldier fired first, and a series of bullets hit Liangping's chest, causing blood to spurt out and Liangping's body to lean back slightly. The rest of the soldiers also aimed at Liangping and fired after the first shot. His flesh was ripped open by the gunpowder, and his bones were shattered by the bullets. But in the next second, the flesh grew out again, and the bones were squeezed together by the tendons and muscles, gradually healing. Roar! The young man let out a beast-like roar, his eyes emitting a demonic red light. Under the effect of the energy explosion, his body suddenly swelled up. The next moment, he disappeared from the soldiers' sights. In the command vehicle, someone let out an unclear scream. Huang Linjun's eyes were bloodshot, and Liangping's figure had long disappeared from the screen in front of him. He could only see a fast-moving black shadow, the shaking camera, and the sound of gunshots and screams coming from the walkie-talkie. Team 2 calling for backup. Team 2 calling for backup. The target is moving too fast. We are unable to snipe. Team 3 reporting. Sir, we have more than half of our people injured, requesting a retreat. I repeat, requesting a retreat. Sir, we can't hold on any longer. Several soft sounds came from the walkie-talkie. After another scream, they lost contact with another group of people. Suddenly, the camera on the sniper's body shook, and then a series of meaningless images appeared. A figure appeared, and in his hand, the sniper's corpse slowly slid down. The other sniper immediately reacted, and a loud boom rang out, and the figure was sent flying. However, he did not die. Instead, he quickly crawled away and disappeared into the shadows. Huang Linjun looked at the screen with bloodshot eyes, and he picked up the walkie-talkie on the other side. "Colonel, The suspect is too dangerous. Please use large-scale destructive weapons and send out air support. On the other side of the walkie-talkie, a faint voice came from it. No need. Tell everyone to retreat. Huang Linjun was stunned, and he immediately said angrily, "How can we do that? The target has strong antisocial tendencies and can kill officials and soldiers without any psychological burden. We have to kill him before he causes more damage. Do not use any powerful weapons and tell the rest of the special forces to retreat quickly. The next operation is to protect the safety of the citizens." Huang Linjun felt that this order was nonsense, and he suddenly opened his eyes wide and shouted, "You are not Colonel Xine? Who are you? Do you know how serious the consequences will be if we don't kill the suspect now?" "Okay, Officer Huang, I am indeed not Colonel Xine. However, I am the person in charge of the special forces this time, and we will take over the rest. From now on, your temporary authority has been revoked. Order everyone present to retreat. Remember, do not engage in any direct confrontation with the target." "Sir," Huang Linjun said through gritted teeth. After leaving behind a cold, "This is an order," the other side ended the call. The entire command vehicle was silent, and Huang Linjun smashed his fist on the table. He already guessed what the other side wanted to do. They must have seen this user's ability and wanted to absorb it. Nowadays, the situation in Beijiang was getting more and more tense by the day. The number of powerful combat ability users was stretched thin, and the value of the lives of ordinary people compared to ability users, in the eyes of the special forces, it was clear which was more important. However, when he really received the order from above, Huang Linjun still felt his heart go cold. He sighed, and his entire body seemed to collapse, but in the end, he still picked up the walkie-talkie and ordered, "All units pay attention, retreat immediately, stop shooting. I repeat, retreat immediately. Stop shooting." Geng Zhong wanted to say something, but was stopped by Huang Linjun's hand. He shook his head, and his eyes were swollen and filled with loneliness. Li Onping, who was inside, naturally did not know what was happening outside. After he killed a few more soldiers, he found that the encirclement around him had loosened, and the remaining soldiers had retreated in all directions, and no one was shooting at him anymore. "What are you waiting for? Go after them, kill them all. Eat them all." Black could not help but urge after noticing that everyone had escaped. Li Onping did not say anything, and looked deeply in the direction where the soldiers had retreated, and then jumped in the opposite direction. "Why are you running away? We can totally eat them all. What is my physical fitness now?" Li Onping asked. "Strength 3. 0. Speed 2. 8. Stamina 3. 9. What's wrong? I will kill everyone who stands in my way." Li Onping's face was still stained with blood that had not dried. "But not now, when I am at my strongest. I will come back." After saying this, Li Onping jumped again, and had already jumped into a building, leaving behind debris on the ground, and disappeared without a trace. Central City, Sequoia Airport. In the departure hall, Wei Shishir was dressed fashionably with a pair of big sunglasses on her face, and was waiting for the plane. Suddenly, a man with a big belly sat down beside her. "This time, when you go to the Federation, you will enter the League of Stars. We might not be able to contact you for a long time, so be careful. I can finally leave this country. I have been waiting impatiently for a long time." Wei Shishir sneered. "When I see Shang Zhenhai, he will naturally not be able to escape from my grasp." After saying this, she looked at the man beside her provocatively and said, "Men are all the same. It's good that you are confident. Shang Zhenhai is a key figure, and when the time comes, I hope that no matter what sacrifice you make, you must hold on to your relationship with him. Although you have only joined for a short time, the organization will remember you." Wei Shishir nodded and did not say anything. "Then I am leaving. We might not have the chance to meet again in the future." The man stood up and walked out, but suddenly he turned his head and said, "Oh, right. The murderer of Shang Anghua has been confirmed. You will not expect, oh? You can't be telling me that it was you?" "Of course it wasn't me. It was Li Onping. He awakened his ability. Then he can be considered to have his revenge. That is good." Wei Shishir frowned. "Sigh. Speaking of which, I did not want to hurt him back then, but who knew that he would be so ignorant and go against the Shang family? Hee, now that he has awakened his ability thanks to you, I'm afraid that he will be recruited into the Xia Dragonfinch. The Xia Dragonfinch's strength is average, but it is considered a first-rate force in the eastern continent. Wei Shishi nodded and said, "That is good. After I gain Shang Jinhai's trust and join the core of the League of Stars, I will give him some compensation." At this moment, a voice sounded from the broadcast, "Passengers heading to the Armester Federation. Your flight key 070 has begun boarding. Please board from gate 23. Wei Shishi ignored the man and walked to the boarding gate. She looked at the afterglow of the setting sun, her eyes filled with longing. Finally, this day has finally come, the peak of this world. I'm finally one step closer to you. Chapter 28. In an office in the police station, Huang Linjun stood in front of a desk. He stood straight and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. He looked extremely nervous. In front of him, a man of unknown age was looking out of the window with his back to him. From Huang Linjun's position, he could only see the man's shoulders. They looked majestic and powerful. Just the aura of his back gave people the illusion that he could carry the world on his shoulders. That Lianping, where is he now? Hearing the man's question, Huang Linjun hesitated for a moment before telling the truth. According to the satellite photos from half an hour ago, he has already left Zhongdu and fled to the south. Fled? But why did he flee? The man's tone was full of doubts. It seemed that he was really confused. Huang Linjun hesitated. Is he afraid that we will hunt him down? Does he need to be afraid? From the battle video of the funeral parlor, as long as we don't use weapons of mass destruction, ordinary small troops are no longer a threat to him, let alone special police and armed police, unless he already knows of our existence. Saying that, the man turned around, revealing a face without wrinkles, eyebrows, or any expression. Only a pair of eyes seemed to reveal countless vicissitudes. Anyone who saw this pair of eyes would feel that this person had definitely experienced countless storms and waves. He picked up a few photos on the table and remained silent. There were the photos of the scene of the bodies of Wester and the other three. Huang Linjun said, "You suspect that they were the ones who leaked it?" The man nodded. Lianping went to the bar, where he killed Shang Jinbao. Then he took the black man away. From the bodies we found, the black man was tortured to extort a confession. Then Lianping killed the other three ability users. It's very likely that he learned something from the black man. He still can't explain how he became so powerful from an ordinary person in such a short time. Maybe it has something to do with his ability. We will only know when we catch him. Huang Linjun thought for a moment, then mustered up his courage and said, "Officer Xia, Lianping is a very vengeful person, and he has a certain antisocial tendency. He has no sense of belonging to the country or the government, and he completely disregards the law. He's an extremely unstable factor in society. We should arrest him before he causes more harm. Otherwise, he might become the next Damian Tanner." A cold snort and a glance were enough to make Huang Linjun feel suffocated. The man called Chief Xia didn't even say a word, but Huang Linjun was oppressed to the point that his legs trembled. He couldn't even say a word. "You think he will destroy Earth?" Nonsense. Shang Angua colluded with ability users from other countries. His intentions were punishable. Although Lianping has caused some damage, it is only because he is too young, cynical, and lacks proper guidance. Chief Xia glanced to Huang Linjun again and said lightly, "This time, I will go to the south to chase him. You stay in Zhongdu to stabilize the situation." Huang Linjun opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but the other party's aura pressed down on him, as heavy as Mount Tai, making him unable to say anything in opposition. He could feel that the energy in the other party's body was like a volcano erupting, ready to erupt. After struggling for a long time, he squeezed out a sentence from between his teeth. "Yes, sir." Then he sat down as if he had collapsed. His body couldn't exert any strength at all. When he looked up again, the man had disappeared, leaving Huang Linjun alone in the office. Is this the power of a top ability user? He is above the government and dominates the fate of ordinary people. I didn't expect the Secret Service to send him here. Huang Linjun gasped and clenched his fists. No, I can't let you trample on the royal power and ignore the law. This Li Onping, I must bring him to justice. Then, he picked up the phone and dialed a series of numbers. Although Huang Linjun was also capable, he hadn't reached the level where he could fight against an army head-on. He had always thought that it was enough for an ability user to reach his level. An overly powerful ability user would only bring harm and no benefit to the country. He had always thought that an ability user that was too powerful would only cause serious injustice in society and take away the benefits of most ordinary people. It would also restrict the management of the government and the development of the country. Therefore, he had always hated criminals like Li Onping with superpowers. In particular, the destruction and influence caused by Li Onping were unprecedentedly bad. This made him even more determined to catch and punish Li Onping. Even if the higher-ups of Xia Dragonfinch had already set the tone that they could recruit him, he still had to try to destroy it. Even if he couldn't bring Li Onping to justice, he had to let him die outside. Before he causes more damage to Xia, Huang Linjun muttered to himself. In an office building in Midtown, Li Qian stared blankly at the corpse in front of him. It was a fatty with a body full of fat, weighing more than 200 pounds. His whole body was wrapped in layers of newspaper. If he tore open the newspaper, he would see his pale face and purple lips. Li Qian didn't know what to do. An hour ago, his leader called him to the office. In the end, within a few minutes, the other party put his hand on his shoulder. "Shali, how's work recently? Are you busy? Do you need me to take care of you?" The other party's hand moved from his shoulder, back, and gradually to his stomach, thighs, and other sensitive areas. Li Qian wanted to resist immediately, but because his strength was not as strong as the other party, he was firmly suppressed by the fatty. "Why are you moving around? Let me ask you, do you not want this job anymore? You're shameless." With a slap, Li Qian slapped the fatty's face, leaving a bright red palm print. "B*TCH, don't be so shameless." After being slapped, the fatty immediately showed his ferocious side and pushed Li Qian onto the sofa. Li Qian's jacket was taken off. She began to scream, struggle, and hit the fatty with both hands, but the fatty didn't move. Li Qian's strength was not enough to break free from a 200-pound fatty. At this moment, Li Qian desperately hoped that the hero in her heart would appear again and save her again. But no matter how she struggled, the miracle did not happen again. The two of them wrestled on the sofa, but they didn't notice that stacks of newspaper floated up from the bookshelf in the office and slowly flew towards the fatty's body. The fatty's face was red with excitement, and one of his hands was tightly pressed on Li Qian's neck. With the other hand, he pulled Li Qian's shirt open, revealing her full breasts. Under the compression of her underwear, they were even fatter and more defined. What followed was Li Qian's incessant screams. Under anger and embarrassment, she seemed to feel that something in her body had been turned on. It was like a light switch. The newspaper in the air seemed to have been summoned and rushed towards the fatty like locusts, wrapping him up layer by layer like a mummy. The fatty's eyes, ears, nose, and mouth were all blocked by the newspaper. He couldn't see anything, and he couldn't breathe. So he began to struggle. He pushed the sofa away and smashed the glass cabinet behind him. But in his panic, not only did this not help him, but it also depleted his oxygen supply. He fell to the ground and kept using both hands to grab the newspaper on his head. But every time he tore off a layer of newspaper, more newspaper would cover him from the air, wrapping his head even thicker. Finally, he found that he couldn't tear off the layers of newspaper from his head. His movements became smaller and smaller, and his breathing became faintly discernible. It wasn't until the fatty had completely turned into a cold corpse that Li Qian reacted. She rushed forward in a panic and tore off the newspaper on the fatty's head layer by layer. In the end, she only saw a purple pig's head. The fatty was no longer breathing. Li Qian sat on the ground and stared blankly at the corpse on the ground. Her mind was in a mess. Murderer, prison, shot. A series of thoughts made her more and more panicked. Why did I encounter such a thing? Finally, Li Qian cried. Tears flowed down and dripped on the floor. The recent series of blows, the long-term pressure of work, and the accidental killing of the fatty today, Li Qian finally couldn't take it anymore. She cried crazily, as if she wanted to vent all the depression in her heart. At this moment, the image of a man appeared in Li Qian's mind. The other party was like a demon king who wantonly ravaged mortals and trampled on the powerful. At this moment, it pierced deeply into her heart. Perhaps I can also be like him. Outside the window of the building, a man without eyebrows, expressionless, an age unknown, stood in the air like a floating ghost. He looked at Li Qian and the fatty through the floor-to-ceiling glass. He watched as the newspapers flew up one by one and wrapped around the fatty. He also watched as the fatty struggled powerlessly and finally died from suffocation. He watched until Li Qian cried crazily. The next day, the TV station's executive, Zhu Dan, was found to have a cerebral infarction and died in his office. His vacancy caused a new round of competition in the TV station. What no one noticed was that on the same day as Zhu Dan's death, the TV station's intern reporter, Li Qian, also handed in a resignation letter and left Zhongdu City the next day, embarking on a path that ordinary people couldn't imagine. From then on, Li Qian's colleagues never heard any news about her. Only occasionally would people remember that there was such a beautiful and hardworking girl in the TV station many years ago. Chapter 29. Something like this happening during a long-distance trip immediately caused a lot of discussion among the onlookers in the restaurant. Someone who had clearly heard the conversation said, "The daughter-in-law and mother-in-law quarreled and ran away with the child. The mother-in-law and husband chased after them and brought them back." A few aunts immediately started gossiping. TSK. Girls nowadays can't take hardships. Just a small matter and they run away with the child. That's outrageous. That's right. We didn't dare to do that back then. We didn't even dare to talk back to our mother-in-law, let alone run away from home. Someone else said suspiciously, "I think that girl is quite pretty. Did she run away after being sold into the mountains? She seemed to be crying when she ran out. Could she really be a human trafficker? Are you for real? Human traffickers are so daring now. How could he kidnap her in broad daylight?" I don't think the girl resisted much. It's probably just a conflict between the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. Maybe there are a lot of swindlers who kidnap women. They pretend to be acquaintances and kidnap people in front of others. However, no matter how much they talked, it was useless now. The van had already left. The matter of the girl being taken away was destined to become a topic of conversation. After a while, the bus driver shouted to get on the bus. The passengers who had finished dinner came out of the restaurant and got on the bus. No one cared about the whereabouts of the girl and the baby anymore. No one noticed that a man was missing from the last row of the bus. Li Amping followed the van from afar. He didn't immediately go forward to rescue the girl. He knew that such human traffickers usually had accomplices, especially the people they abducted and sold. They would usually gather and keep them in custody somewhere. Also, their superiors, human traffickers, organ buyers, and other criminal gangs. He planned to uproot them. Therefore, he quietly followed the van. With his current speed and stamina, following a van was effortless. Moreover, they were on a mountain road, so the van didn't dare to drive too fast. Li Amping followed even more easily. As he followed, he also listened to the movements in the van to prevent any accidents. After the van was far away from the gas station, the expressions of the three men and one woman suddenly changed. A strong man was driving, and a fat middle-aged woman was sitting in the front passenger seat. The remaining muscular man and the short boy sat in the second row of the van, sandwiching the girl on both sides. The middle-aged woman took out a pack of cigarettes from her bag and smoked one. Hearing the sobbing voice of the woman behind her, she scolded, "What are you crying for? I'm telling you, don't even think about escaping once you're in our hands. Be obedient, and I'll find a good seller for you. Otherwise, I'll sell you to a brothel in the southern border and get you pregnant every day." Hearing this, the woman cried even harder. The short man beside her looked at her lecherously and comforted her. "Little sister, be obedient. Big brother will take care of you. When the time comes, I'll find a rich person to buy it for you. You'll have nothing to worry about for the rest of your life." Seeing the woman crying like a pear blossom in the rain, the man's eyes turned red. He couldn't help but reach out his hand to the woman's back and gently stroke her. The woman screamed and retreated to the other side, but she bumped into another muscular man's arm. She couldn't avoid the short man's touch and could only cry and shout, I beg you, don't. What are you afraid of? I'm just comforting you." The man licked his lips and said, "Put the child down first. Don't hurt it." "No." Hearing this, the woman hugged the child in her arms even tighter. She bit her lips and said, I beg you, at least let the child go. Okay, put the child down first and let me check you. Don't let me see if there's anything wrong with it. We can't sell it." The short man gave the muscular man a look, and the latter reached out to grab the child. The woman struggled fiercely, but her strength was no match for the muscular man. She was slapped a few times by the short man, and the child was taken away. With the child taken away, the woman became even more agitated. She cried, screamed, and clawed with her hands, leaving a bloody mark on the short man's face. Damn it! The short man slapped the woman again, grabbed her hair, and dragged her to the last row of the van. He shouted to the middle-aged fat woman in the front passenger seat, F***CK, I can't hold it in anymore. Anyway, she has given birth before. Let me do it first. The fat woman frowned and said, Don't kill her. We're still waiting to sell it. Don't worry, I've developed it. I guarantee that it will sell for more. The man's eyes lit up. He pushed the woman to the back seat and immediately began to pull the woman's clothes. He wanted to reach his hands in and grope the woman's body. The woman cried and screamed. Her hands tried to push the short man away, but he sat on her body. She couldn't avoid his hands. The child was held in the muscular man's arms. She was crying nonstop. Her heart-wrenching cries sounded so miserable. I beg you, don't do it in front of the child. The woman's face was full of tears as she begged with a hoarse voice. The short man didn't care. He held down the woman's hands with one hand and quickly unbuttoned the woman's clothes with the other. This is called sex education. Let this little brat open his eyes and know that his mother is a slut. Damn it, I'm going to die. Boom. Before he could finish his sentence, a hand came down from the roof of the van and hit his head. Immediately, red and white brain matter exploded and stuck to the bodies of the people in the van. The woman fainted from the shock when she saw the brain matter on her face. What's that? There's someone on the roof. The remaining 3 human traffickers had different reactions, but before they could do anything, the hand had already reached back. Then, another hand reached in from the window and grabbed the plump middle-aged woman's head. She was pulled out of the window and thrown out of the mountain road. The fat woman drew an arc in the air and fell toward the cliff in the distance. A long scream sounded in the air. As the arc fell, it stopped abruptly and turned into a pool of flesh and blood on the cliff. The remaining 2 muscular men were horrified. Under their desperate gazes, Li Onping tore a big hole in the roof of the van. He then jumped on the roof and put one hand on the driver's shoulder. He said coldly, Stop the car. The driver stopped the van while trembling. He looked at Li Onping with eyes full of fear. After the van stopped, Li Onping ignored him. He just grabbed the muscular man who was holding the child and tore his neck to pieces. Then, he took the child back into his arms. He put the child in the front passenger seat and said to the driver, If you dare to drive away, I'll kill you. Right now, in the driver's eyes, Li Onping was like a demon, a monster. How could he dare to disagree? He quickly nodded, afraid that Li Onping would tear him apart. Therefore, Li Onping carried the 2 corpses out of the van and threw them into the forest. He then carried the child and sat in the front passenger seat. He said to the driver, Drive to the nearest town. The driver started the van anxiously, his face pale. He did not know what fate was waiting for him. Black smiled and said, You're getting more and more skilled. You're eating their souls when you kill them. You could have just eaten their souls directly and didn't have to be so violent. They deserve to die. It's too easy for them to die from brain death. Recently, Li Onping felt that he was getting more and more skilled at killing people. Moreover, the speed at which he absorbed souls was getting faster. He did not even need to make any special movements. The moment he killed the other party's soul would be absorbed by him. Compared to when he first had to place his hands on other people's bodies, it was much more convenient. Right now, although your physical body can become stronger endlessly, the improvement of your abilities is very slow. Black guessed, I've never seen a human with an ability like mine before. However, based on my experience, if your ability continues to evolve, you might be able to absorb the souls of ordinary people from a distance without having to come in contact with them. The efficiency of your absorption will also be higher. Absorb from a distance? Li Onping did not expect that he could do this. If he could absorb souls from a distance, there was no doubt that he would be invincible when fighting against ordinary people who did not have any abilities. There would also be many things that he could do. However, everything still depended on the range of this distance. Half an hour later, at the entrance of a road in a small town, the woman in the van woke up. Seeing that her body was covered in red and white, she let out a series of agonizing cries. However, when she saw the child in front of her, she cried out in surprise and joy. She hugged the child tightly, as if she was afraid of losing her child again. Outside the van, Li Onping saw that the woman was fine and turned to walk out of the town. The driver followed behind him, his footsteps weak. The back of his clothes had long been drenched in cold sweat. He wanted to run away, but looking at Li Onping's figure walking in front, he could not muster up the courage to do so. Next, I'll ask and you'll answer. Oh, okay, the man replied with a trembling voice. He could not help but tremble with every word he said. Li Onping looked at him and said with a pleasant expression, "Don't worry. Answer my questions properly. You're just a driver. You don't deserve to die. As long as you answer my questions honestly, I won't kill you." Black laughed again. "You're such a hypocrite. You've already planned to kill him, yet you're still lying to him. Is this your justice? This is a necessary process in order to eliminate evil." Li Onping said without changing his expression, "Think it through and I'll start asking." As they walked, Li Onping felt that the man's heartbeat was slowly calming down. He began to ask about the man's situation. He found out that the man was a small gang of 4 people. Their leader was an organization called Lone Wolf, and Lone Wolf lived in Jade City. All the human traffickers in the vicinity would go to Lone Wolf to sell their stolen goods after they abducted people. It was said that Lone Wolf was very cunning. For many years, no one even knew what their leader looked like. There were even differing opinions on whether he was a man or a woman, old or young. There were many people who wanted to assassinate their leader, but they were all easily evaded by him. They did not even manage to find him before they were tracked down and killed. A few years ago, there were a few hot-blooded detectives who wanted to get rid of this criminal cancer completely. However, in less than 2 days, they all disappeared. This lone wolf either has a strong background or an ability user is playing tricks. Li Onping guessed after hearing about Lone Wolf. After the driver finished telling him all the information he knew, he carefully looked at Li Onping's face, worried for his own life. Li Onping then asked about the location where they sold their stolen goods. He then asked, "Do you know what Lone Wolf used so many women and children for after buying them?" They forced those women to have sex, and some of them were also sold overseas. The driver shook his head blankly. However, when he saw Li Onping's frown, he immediately said in a panic, "Also, there are rumors that Lone Wolf is a member of the shadow cult. He bought people to be sacrificed to the Black God." Chapter 30. That's nonsense. What kind of religion would need so many people as sacrifices? Li Onping looked at the driver's flustered face, shook his head, and said, "What kind of religion is the shadow cult? Why haven't I heard of it?" "I don't know either. It's true. The shadow cult is an ancient cult in the Jadeite city. Legend has it that they were the masters of the Jadeite city before the Disya. What they loved most was to kill and sacrifice living people to please their gods. But more than 100 years ago, the Desia's army invaded the southern border and ruled the entire Jadeite city. The shadow cult was also wiped out as an evil cult. Apart from the legends left behind, there are no more records about the shadow cult. The older locals all know about this. Liamping was even more confused after hearing this. He didn't expect that this human trafficking incident would involve an ancient evil cult. It seemed that things were more complicated than he had imagined. He then asked the driver a few more questions. When he found that the driver didn't know more, he gently touched the driver's arm. After eating the driver's soul, he casually threw the body on the nearby mountain path. Then, he ran toward the Jadeite city. He wanted to kill Lone Wolf and wipe out all the human trafficking organizations here. 3 hours later, at the Jadeite city's long-distance bus station, Liamping walked out of an alley. Behind him, 2 hooligans were lying on the ground, groaning. Liamping's face was gloomy. This was the 3rd group of thieves he had seen since he got off the bus at the long-distance bus station. He had imagined how many criminals there were in the Jadeite city and how high the crime rate was. Now that he was here, he realized that he had been too naive. Looking up, the sky was covered in gray smog. He couldn't even see the moon, let alone the stars. This was caused by the large areas of factories in the city that discharge pollutants. All kinds of gray and black gases were emitted from the chimneys, wantonly discharging into the sky. In a place like this, no one cared about the pollution. Inside the bus station, there were citizens in ragged clothes with gloomy expressions. There were only a few children whose faces didn't show any innocence or childishness. This was because they weren't playing on the streets. Instead, they were surrounding the passengers who were getting off the bus and asking for their belongings. After being scolded, he didn't get angry. He just changed to another passenger and continued to beg. The numbness and sadness on their faces made Liamping's heart turn cold. There were many pedestrians on the road, but they were all minding their own business. They seemed to be in a hurry, and their expressions were cold. They never asked about what was happening around them. Liamping asked for directions several times, but was ignored by the other party. On the street, the shops on both sides of the street were colorful and endless. However, most of the shops around the station had 1 or 2 women in revealing clothes standing at the door. When they saw Liamping dressed neatly, they cheered loudly and stroked their hair coquettishly at Liamping. "Handsome, come in and play. Handsome, come in. Big sister will love you." There were even some who took off their shirts in front of the crowd, revealing a pair of plump little bunnies that jumped out, attracting the attention of the citizens on the street. Liamping glanced at them and quickly left. This place was more chaotic than he had imagined. He didn't know what to do when faced with such self-deprecating people. In such an atmosphere, Black seemed to be particularly happy. He asked, "Hee, why don't you teach them a lesson? Are you tempted? They're just forced by life." Liamping deliberated and said, "They're not really evil. Up to you. But this is really a good place. I feel like the air is filled with the smell of crime, and it's developed very well. It's not inferior to the central capital at all. I'm so excited that I'm trembling." Liamping nodded and didn't deny it. Black was indeed right. Although the environment was terrible, the citizens looked more indifferent, and the crime rate was shockingly high. But Jadeite City was indeed very prosperous. Looking around, one could see towering skyscrapers in all directions. The elevated roads were densely built like a spider's web. Especially now that it was night, if one looked from above, the entire Jadeite City was a sea of lights. It was as bright as day. This situation was even more extreme in the center of the city. From underground to above ground, there were all kinds of shops selling all kinds of clothing, food, housing, and transportation. There was even prostitution, gambling, and drugs. From beautiful virgins to extinct animals, and even weapons that had been eliminated from the army, everything could be bought here. It was simply a paradise for criminals. Liamping hailed a taxi and rushed to the place that the traffickers had given him to dispose of the stolen goods. The scene of crime and prosperity in Jadeite City made him feel indescribably irritated. But the surrounding information was still instilled in him. 50 meters away, a prostitute with heavy makeup was having sex with 3 men in an alley. The sound of their panting seemed to be right beside Li Onping's ears. 100 meters away, a man snatched a woman's bag and fled. But before he could take a few steps, he was shot dead by the woman who took out a gun. The woman picked up the bag, kicked the man's body a few times, cursed a few times, and left. The people around seemed to be used to it, and no one even called the police. Passing by a casino, a man in a suit jumped out of the window and fell to his death on the spot. A few burly men hurried out of the door and dragged the man's body back. They were discussing who to sell the body parts to pay off his debts. Jadeite City. Everything here was evil on the surface, but there was a rule that was unique to them. Everyone acted according to the rules, even if these rules were absurd and unruly in the eyes of outsiders. Li Onping's eyes looked out of the window, and his ears were listening to the sounds. For the first time, he felt that he was still unable to control the evil with his own strength. Because there were too many, Jadeite City was simply filled with crime. Everything was filled with evil. Could he really manage it all by himself? Li Onping gradually began to think. He thought about how to change the situation in Jadeite City. The idea of how to change the world was presented to him for the first time. In the past, although he said that he wanted to uphold justice, his idea was very simple, which was to kill the bad guys and help the good guys. But when he came to Jadeite City, when crime and death lined up in front of him, he understood that it was not as simple as killing the bad guys to change the world and uphold justice. He needed something more complicated and more effective. Half an hour later, the car stopped, and Li Onping's thoughts were interrupted. He got out of the car, and the taxi drove away impatiently, as if it was very dangerous here. Looking left and right, Li Onping realized that his destination was a somewhat remote area. There were dilapidated buildings and abandoned factories all around. The walls were covered with graffiti of unknown meaning. In the distance, there were some homeless people gathered in twos and threes. From time to time, their cold eyes would look at Li Onping as he got out of the car. A few 100 meters away, there were a few old residential buildings. Downstairs, there were a few grocery stores and convenience stores, but the business was cold and empty. Li Onping glanced around and walked toward his destination. It was an abandoned building. The door was rusty and locked by a large iron lock. Li Onping frowned. This was different from the information he received from the driver. He did not hear anyone in the building. Although it was not as lively as the city center, it should not be so desolate. As one of the strongholds where a lone wolf took in abducted women and children, there should be no one. He touched the iron lock on the door, looked around, and pulled the iron lock open with a little force. Pushing the door open, Li Onping walked in. The abandoned building had 5 floors. It was originally built as a nursing home. Therefore, the first floor was filled with offices, and the second to fourth floors were filled with various dormitory-like rooms. Li Onping did not notice the presence of anyone, so he could only scan the rooms one by one. He opened the office on the first floor and drank half of the coffee on the table. He rummaged through the drawers and filing cabinets, but found nothing left. He could only find some erotic magazines and tool books. At the back of the office, a rectangular object was covered by a black cloth. In the darkness, if one did not pay attention, they would almost miss it. Li Onping smelled a pungent odor, and a bad premonition flashed through his mind. He stretched out his hand and pulled the black cloth away. Looking at the scene in front of him, his eyes narrowed into slits. It was a simple cell built with an iron cage. It was less than 1 meter high and 2 meters wide. People could only lie down or lie down inside. There was also a small basin on the ground. It seemed to be filled with rancid leftovers. There were also some bright red blood stains around the iron cage. The stench of feces and urine came out of the cage. A withered child's corpse was lying in the cage. Large numbers of ants were crawling on his body, revealing the eerie white bones. It was hard to imagine what kind of torture and destruction he had suffered before he died. Li Onping covered the black cloth again. His face was ashen and his fists were white. But he did not say a word. He just let out a deep breath and checked the other corners of the office. But Li Onping's operation was fruitless. From a messy office, it seemed that the people here had left in a hurry. But they took all the information with them and did not leave anything useful. Thus, Li Onping continued to walk upstairs, intending to check all the dormitories. The corridor was dark. Li Onping tried the light switch and found that there was no response. But with his current eyesight, even in the dark corridor, he could see everything. He opened the dormitories on the second floor one by one. The environment inside was as bad as he expected. The human traffickers did not treat the abducted people as human beings at all. Excrement and blood that had turned black could be seen everywhere. There was nothing in the dormitory except for a bed. The windows were all nailed shut with wooden boards. He could not see the outside, and the sun could not shine in. According to the trafficker's driver, the people who were sent here could only eat one meal a day. Those who resisted fiercely would be fed sleeping pills. Everyone was in a state of weakness and could only lie on the bed. There was no shower or bathroom. The people who watched over them often cleaned the dormitory carelessly for a few months. They only had a chance to take a shower when they were taken to meet the cellar. There were even fewer clues left behind in such a dormitory. Li Onping's only gain was that a few people used their fingernails or blood to carve their names and origins on the walls and the edges of the beds. Chapter 31. Li Jing, college student from Tianjin, Wang Lina, 24 years old, came to Jadeite City to work from her hometown. Bai Tingting, traveling to Nanjiang with her boyfriend, names and backgrounds were written down by their owners one after another. Some of them were filled with despair, while others were filled with hope. Li Onping could feel their helplessness from those bloody words. Black did not say anything. He could feel that ever since Li Onping entered the building, a violent emotion had been spreading in his heart. It could explode at any time. Black, do you have a way to read their memories when you absorb their souls? I can, Black replied. But your ability level is too low now. If you want to read their memories, you have to level up your ability. To put it simply, you have to eat more. Don't worry, I have a lot of people to eat this time. Li Onping clenched his fists tightly. His eyes flashed with a cold light. He had never wanted to kill as much as he did at this moment. Next, Li Onping searched the rest of the rooms. But other than seeing more names, he still found nothing. But the anger in his heart was getting hotter and hotter. Finally, he walked to the last room on the 5th floor. The carefully decorated door seemed to indicate that this room was different. Li Onping pushed the door open and found that this room was twice the size of the ones downstairs. It had a separate bathroom, a television, and a dining table. Especially this room with an open window. He could see the streets and buildings outside. Although it was still simple compared to the cages downstairs, this room was already considered luxurious. Li Onping walked around the room. Suddenly, he looked at the big bed in the middle of the room. The bed was covered with a thin layer of gauze. He could vaguely see a human figure hiding under it. Li Onping squinted his eyes and walked to the big bed. He lifted the gauze casually. He did not hear any heartbeat or breathing. Before he lifted the gauze, he was sure that there was another corpse on the bed. Just as he had expected, a female corpse was lying on the bed under the thin veil that had been lifted, but she was much better preserved than the one downstairs. Her skin was still smooth and white. Her slender thighs and arms showed that she was malnourished for a long time. Li Onping turned the female corpse over and found that there was a large bruise on her chest. Kiss marks were clearly visible on her breasts. White liquid was flowing out her lower body. Obviously, she was violated before she died. Li Onping lifted the woman's waterfall-like golden hair, revealing a beautiful face. It was a face with the characteristic of the Western continent and the mellowness of the Xia people. She seemed to be a mixed-blood beauty. Obviously, this was a mixed-blood beauty who was considered a top-grade product by the trafficker. But for some reason, Lone Wolf's subordinates suddenly retreated, and before they left, they raped and killed the woman. Why did they suddenly leave? They even raped and killed you before they left. Li Onping looked at the female corpse on the bed and muttered to himself. Black asked, not necessarily. Is it possible that Don came to attack this place and raped and killed the woman in passing? but there are no traces of resistance, and no gunpowder. Liamping said as he carefully searched the woman's body, hoping to find some clues. But he still found nothing. After all, he wasn't a professional. He didn't know how to dissect a corpse. He didn't have professional equipment, nor did he have his own intelligence network. It was expected that he wouldn't find any useful clues. Liamping took one last look at the female corpse and closed her eyes. He said coldly, "Don't worry, I'll bury all the murderers with you." After saying that, Liamping didn't stay any longer. Instead, he jumped out of the window on the 5th floor. With a bang, his whole body shook slightly, and he landed on his feet. His legs were strong, and he didn't even feel sore. He looked at the bonfire in the distance. There were a few tramps looking in his direction. However, it was dark, and Liamping fell very quickly. He didn't think that those tramps could see anything, but he still walked toward those tramps. He wanted to get some information from these tramps. But unfortunately, after paying a few hundred yuan and knocking out a tramp who wanted to rob him, Liamping didn't get the information he wanted. The tramps only knew that the people in the building started to evacuate last night. Several container trucks drove over and emptied the building. As for why those people moved and where they moved to, the tramps had no idea. Liamping asked them again and found that they knew nothing about the human trafficking, imprisonment, and abuse in the building. Apparently, Lone Wolf's subordinates did a good job of keeping things secret. Sighing, Liamping looked at the convenience store and grocery store in the distance. As the store closest to the building, Lone Wolf's subordinates might visit this place often. Maybe he could find some information. Thinking of that, Liamping walked toward the convenience store. Passing through the door of the convenience store, there was a clanking sound. Liamping looked at the cashier. A middle-aged man with black-rimmed glasses put down the newspaper and nodded at him. "What do you want to buy? I'll tell you where it is." "No, I'll just look around." Liamping answered casually as he strolled around the supermarket. As he strolled, he tried to get closer to the boss. However, the middle-aged man didn't seem to be in the mood for conversation. Liamping wasn't a conversationalist either. The two of them chatted casually. "Boss, do you know what the buildings around here are for? I don't see anyone going in or out." The middle-aged man put down the newspaper again and looked at Liamping cautiously. "Why are you asking?" "Nothing, I'm just asking." Liamping pretended not to care and replied, "I just moved here and saw a few abandoned buildings nearby that no one was using. I was curious." The middle-aged man snorted and said, "If you want to survive in Jadeite City, the first thing you need to remember is not to meddle in other people's business." Liamping shrugged and chatted with the man again. However, no matter how much he tried, he couldn't get anything out of the boss. However, judging from the man's previous behavior, he obviously knew something about Lone Wolf Stronghold. The two of them chatted for a while. Just as Liamping was considering whether to use violence, there was a clanking sound at the door. Liamping looked over and saw 3 people who looked like hooligans walking in. As soon as the 3 of them came in, they started to loot, especially some snacks and fruits. They didn't pay and just picked them up to eat. The shelves were also turned into a mess. In the end, 2 of them packed their bags. The other person, whose hair was dyed blonde, walked in front of them with a can of milk in his hand. He put on the cashier's counter and shouted at the boss, "Check." At this time, the boss of the convenience store put down the newspaper. He acted as if he didn't know anything about the previous behavior of the 3 hooligans. He smiled at the blonde, picked up the milk, and said with a forced smile, "It's $2.03. Thank you for your patronage. Keep the change." The blonde threw $5 on the cashier's counter. Just as he was about to leave, he turned his head and said, "By the way, where's the fruit-flavored milk? That's more delicious. You should get some more." Okay. The boss hurriedly nodded and said, "I'll get it tomorrow. Fruit-flavored milk, right? I'll remember it." The yellow-haired man nodded his head in satisfaction and walked towards the door arrogantly with his 2 underlings. However, he found that the tall Liamping was blocking the door. "I'm too lazy to talk to people like you." Liamping squinted at the 3 of them and said, "Put your things back and I'll let you go. Otherwise, I'll break your arms." "Kid, do you know who we are?" "Smelly kid, beat him." Liamping was too lazy to listen to their nonsense. He directly went up and beat the 3 hooligans to the ground with 2 punches and 1 kick. The 3 of them didn't even have time to react before they felt a burst of pain. They were shocked and scared of Li Anping. The nearby convenience store owner was also stunned. He looked at Li Anping and didn't know what to say. "Get out of here." Li Anping pretended to kick the 3 punks on the ground. The 3 punks immediately rolled away like gourds and crawled out of the door. "Leave your things," Li Anping said again. The 3 of them didn't even care about their bags. They threw them on the ground and ran away. They didn't even say a word. It seems that it's not so bad to meddle in other people's business. Li Anping smiled at the boss. The boss was speechless. He walked to the door and took out the goods from the 2 bags and put them back on the shelf. He said as he sorted them out, "I'm not as good as you. I'm afraid of other people's revenge. So I'll tell you, and you listen. I'll tell you everything that I can. If I can't, I won't tell you even if you ask." Li Anping nodded to show that he understood. The boss looked at him deeply, locked the door, and then walked toward the counter. Chapter 32. Hearing Li Anping's words, Dong Man smiled even more happily. His small eyes almost narrowed into slits. He didn't answer, only rubbing his thumb and forefinger. Li Anping snorted and took out a stack of money from his pocket. He never thought that the information he had been looking for about ability users would be obtained from a newspaper merchant in a border city. Ability users are said to be a secret, but also not a secret. Ordinary people don't know much about it. But in the underworld, there's no one who doesn't know about ability users. Dong Man stuffed the money into his pocket with satisfaction, and then continued, "Ability has a long history. I'm just an ordinary person, so I don't know much about it. I only know that ability users are now classified as level 0 to level 5. In total, there are 6 major systems: bloodline, parasitic, mutation, domain, and ancient. Level 5? Black. Didn't you say there's a total of level 0 to level 10? How would I know?" Black's face was gloomy. "But I remember that among humans, there should be a total of 10 energy levels." Dong Man naturally didn't know about the conversation between the 2 in front of him, and continued, "Actually, in Jadeite City, whether it's the Hall of Loyalty, Violet, or the later Qilin group, there's no lack of strong people who can fight, and naturally there are also a few ability users. Just like the Hall of Loyalty's 4 heavenly kings mentioned just now, I suspect that 2 of them are ability users." Li Anping and Black didn't speak anymore, but listened seriously to Dong Man's words. Last time, although Jay was an ability user, his strength wasn't up to par, and what he knew probably wasn't as much as what this information merchant in front of them knew. And what Dong Man said next also made Li Anping understand more about ability users in Jadeite City. Jadeite City was a city where half of the sky was held up by the dark forces, and the struggle between the various gangs and organizations could be said to be a common occurrence, especially since this place was at the border between the Xia and the southern countries. Many ability users and soldiers who retired from the wars of the 18 southern countries would often come here. Ability users were existences who possessed strength far beyond ordinary humans. This was even more true on the battlefield. Whether it was large countries like the Xia and Ice Fortress or small countries like Baiwei and Flan in the south, aptitude users had always been one of the main forces on the battlefield. Their suddenness, concealment, mobility, and the astonishing destructive power of high-level ability users had always been respected by the armies of various countries. The 18 southern countries have been fighting for many years. Naturally, they were very familiar with the battle of ability users. Once the ability users of these countries were discovered, what awaited him would be endless battles. As for the cultivation of ability users, it had always permeated the development of the country. For example, Fang Qi's hometown, the Bayou country, was famous for its martial arts. They developed many martial arts suitable for strengthening the body, and their ability users' close combat abilities were second to none in the 18 countries. And Fang Qi was such a capable martial arts master. According to rumors, he had once single-handedly killed over 100 gang members with heavy firepower. This was simply unimaginable in other cities in Xia. It must be known that even Li Onping had not been able to kill so many people in one go in the central capital. Jadeite City was perhaps the most chaotic city in Xia. It was the city with the most conflicts every day. The density of ability users here was also much higher than in other cities. However, ever since Fang Qi had defeated the 4 heavenly kings of the Loyalty Hall in one battle, the entire Jadeite city's underworld had begun to faintly spread the word that Fang Qi was the strongest. There was even a certain market for exaggerated titles, such as the strongest ability user in the South, peerless genius, and martial saint. After all, ability users were not like in wuxia novels, where the older they were, the more powerful they were. On the contrary, the younger they were, the better their physical fitness, the more vigorous their spiritual power, the easier it was to raise their ability level, and the stronger their combat ability. And Fang Qi's recent achievements were very convincing, gaining the admiration of a group of young people. However, in the face of the Qilin group's desperate counterattack, the Loyalty Hall, Violet, and other veteran organizations were not afraid. A world-shaking battle was about to unfold in Jadeite City, Xia's capital of crime. Just like that, as Dongman spoke, Li Onping would ask a few questions from time to time. Before long, they had gained a thorough understanding of the 3 major powers in Jadeite City. Dongman's saliva was flying everywhere as he spoke, but he still wanted to continue. Just then, Li Onping suddenly asked, "There seem to be a lot of human traffickers in Jadeite City. On my way here, I saw people abducting and selling women a few times." Hearing Li Onping's words, Dongman smiled indifferently. "That's nothing. There are people disappearing every day in Jadeite City. And it can be said that in Jadeite City, if a person goes missing for more than 48 hours, then even the police and the government of Xia can forget about finding them." Li Onping's expression changed, and his tone became somewhat stiff. "Oh, where did they go?" Dongman did not notice the change in Li Onping's tone, and replied directly, "Where else could they have gone? In the south, in Baiwei, Flan, and several other countries, pornography is legal. There's also the trade of human organs, the trade of female slaves, and even some high-quality goods are exported to the Federation of the Western Mainland, the Code Nation, and other big countries." Li Onping asked again, "Don't they sell to the Xia people? Is there such a trade in Jadeite City?" "Why? You want to buy?" Dongman patted Li Onping's shoulder and smiled. "I couldn't tell that you have such an appetite. But Xia is very strict in this regard. Jadeite City is still fine, but in other places, if you want to keep female slaves, you can't do without some power." Li Onping also smiled and said, "I don't necessarily want to buy. I just want to see if you have a place to recommend. It's best if there's a lot of them." Dongman revealed a wretched smile. "Understood. Then let me introduce you to a place. There's a lot of them, and they have all the goods. There are often high-ranking officials and rich businessmen from the mainland who send their subordinates to purchase goods. And they've all been trained, so they definitely won't run away or commit suicide." As he spoke, Dongman took out a pen and paper and wrote down an address for him. "Go to this address. If someone asks you who introduced you, just say my name," Dongman said as he patted his chest. Li Onping picked up the note and suddenly asked, "Does this place belong to Lone Wolf?" Dongman's expression changed. "Where did you hear this name from? Since I even know about ability users, of course I've heard of this name." Li Onping took out a stack of cash and handed it to Dongman from under the table. "A friend told me that in the entire Jadeite City, Lone Wolf's goods are the best. So I want to ask if you're right." Dongman took the money and said, "Then your friend knows quite a lot. But the entire human trafficking business in Jadeite City is done by Lone Wolf. Even the Hall of Loyalty, Qilin Group, and Violet Group only buy people from them." "Oh, to be able to snatch people from the mouths of these 3 organizations, this Lone Wolf is really impressive." Li Onping smiled. "Tell me about them." Dongman frowned. "Lone Wolf's people are too dangerous. They're all a bunch of scum. Usually, I don't want to sell information about them. If people find out, I'll be in trouble. I'm not a cop. I'm just curious. Can you tell me more about them?" After saying that, Li Onping stuffed another stack of cash into Dong Man's arms. Dong Man pretended to push it away, then took the money and said, "Let's go. There are too many people here. Let's go out and talk." Li Onping nodded and followed Dong Man. The two of them walked out of the bar. Li Onping followed Dong Man and turned into a dark alley. Only then did Dong Man stop. Li Onping looked at Dong Man looking around. He wanted to tell him that there was no one around. If there was someone, he could see or hear them. But obviously, this was not realistic. For an information merchant like Dong Man to survive in Jadeite City until now, caution was essential. After about 10 minutes, Dong Man was sure that no one was following or eavesdropping. He said to Li Onping, "Sorry to keep you waiting. Lone Wolf's people are too evil. It's fine if we talk about the Hall of Loyalty, Violet Group, or Cheeling Group, but we don't know how many people were killed by Lone Wolf's people." Seeing Li Onping nod his head in understanding, Dong Man continued, "Lone Wolf's people are not from Xia. 7 or 8 years ago, a dozen people came from the south. Now, there are 400 people, maybe even 500. They come from Scattered Star Mountain in Inchi. It's a den of scum and a place of exile for criminals. Even mercenaries are not willing to provoke the people there. You know, since the natural disaster 50 years ago, small countries like Inchi in the south have had a harder time. And their gang's favorite thing to do is abduct and sell women. In the beginning, they recruited young women from small countries in the south to be nannies and maids in Xia. But once the girls were smuggled over, they used violence and drugs to control them and make them prostitutes. They would also trade some human organs, mainly from some children. But in recent years, they found that kidnapping young girls from Xia and selling them to rich people in the south and abroad made more money. Jadeite City was the best environment for kidnapping. The girls who went missing here would never be found again. After listening to Lone Wolf's news, Li Onping nodded with a heavy expression and asked, "Have you heard of the Shadow Sect?" Dong Man was at a loss and asked, "What does this have to do with the Shadow Sect?" "Wait, you don't really believe the rumor about Lone Wolf doing live sacrifices, do you? That sounds like a rumor." "It's nothing." Li Onping shook his head and turned to leave. "I have nothing else to ask. Goodbye." Dong Man looked at his back and opened his mouth. In the end, he couldn't help but say, "I don't know what your purpose is. Maybe your friend has been taken away, or maybe your wife has gone missing. But I advise you to give up. No one has ever been able to find the people who have gone missing here." Li Onping heard Dong Man's words and paused, but didn't say a word. Then he quickly left the alley. Chapter 33. While Li Onping was investigating, on the other side of the city police's Secret Service was also having a headache over an urgent matter. The Secret Service was under the jurisdiction of Xia Dragonfinch, and it was a department specifically responsible for managing ability users in Jadeite City. Although it was nominally part of the public security system, it was actually a self-contained system. In many cases, it could even use the resources of the police at will. This time, the Secret Service was not willing to intervene when Zhongyi Hall, Violet Orchid, and the Kirin Group were fighting. Instead, they wanted to sit on top of the mountain and watch the tigers fight. In the end, they would make a strong appearance and clean up the mess. However, this way, on the surface, they could be considered relaxed. Internally, however, they had to pay attention to the development of the situation at all times to prevent the battle from getting out of hand. After all, their biggest goal was to maintain stability. The battle between the three major organizations, especially the battle between ability users, could cause a huge commotion if they relaxed even a little bit. Perhaps it was not a big deal for the whole of Xia, but for the officials here, it was a real matter of political achievement and whether they could continue to be the local tyrant. But something unexpected happened, and it ruined their plan. Xiao Laikong? Why is he here? When did the Tianjing Secret Service headquarters start to care about a remote place like ours? I don't understand either. There are small-scale conflicts every day in the north. I heard that the Fire Dragon Vanguard in the Ice Fortress has already sent Lei Di and White Short Star. Why would he come here at this time? Whether it's Lei Di or White Short Star, any one of them has the combat power to destroy a city, but at this time, Could it be that someone in the south is restless again? Speaking of which, Fong Chi of the Kirin Group, his teacher is from the royal family of the Baiwei country. Don't make wild guesses. Look at this. Huang Linjun sent it to me. You're still in contact with him? What is this? Liamping? They've just been recruited, and now they're sending us here to seize power? He wants to clean up Jadeite City before the war in the north starts? Are you kidding me? Huang Linjun's words can't be trusted completely. In short, send someone to find this Liamping first, and then test him. If it doesn't work, we can only clean it up. Then what about Xiao Laikong? He's not easy to deal with. He's not here yet. There are so many people who go missing in Jadeite City every year. Who has ever found them? 6 hours later, Jadeite City, Diamond Street. Colorful neon lights illuminated the entire street. Amidst the red light and green light, one could see that from the end of the street to the end of the street, there were small high-rise buildings on both sides of the road that was more than 100 meters long. On the first floor of the small high-rise buildings, there were rows of display windows. Behind the display windows were scantily clad women who were constantly flirting. It was almost midnight, but from time to time, a few men would pick a girl outside the display window and walk to the upper floor of the display window with the chosen girl in their arms. This was one of the red light districts in Jadeite City. It was also one of the locations that Dong Man had provided. Under the surface of the sex trade, there was a hidden evil trade of female slaves in the depths of this place. Compared to the huge profits from the slave trade, the profits from the business on the street were just a drop in the ocean. Most of the time, only workers and office workers would spend money in this place. The quality of the women in the display windows was also very ordinary. It was rare to see some beautiful goods. Within a few days, they would be taken away by the bigger nightclubs or managers. The women in the display windows were mostly of their own free will. They either needed money urgently or were addicted to material desires. They only needed to pay Lone Wolf a protection fee, and they could do business here. Lone Wolf provided the venue and protection. Among the people coming and going, Liamping carried a backpack and strolled in the red light district. His eyes swept across the display windows and the crowd, but he did not stop at all. He did not walk quickly, but his eyes never stopped in one place. He was always looking back and forth. Sometimes he would tilt his head to listen, as if he was searching for something. However, he did not do anything even after walking one round. Instead, he found a roadside stall and sat down. Boss, a bowl of small wontons. The roadside stall owner was an old man who was over 60 years old. He specialized in providing midnight snacks like wontons and noodles to the hungry customers of the brothel. Every night, he set up a stall on this street to earn some money to support his family. Liamping ordered a bowl of small wontons and sat down. He took out a thick dictionary from his backpack. It was a dictionary of Hindi language. Opening the dictionary, Liamping flipped through the thick dictionary as if he was playing with it. If an ordinary person looked at it from a back, they would not be able to see a single word clearly. They would only see the pages flipping quickly. After learning about Lone Wolf from Dong Man, he went to a library and bought a few books. Some of the books that he could not find, he downloaded them from the internet, printed them, and put them in his backpack. The dictionary flipped through quickly. Like a computer, the words were quickly entered into Liamping's brain and then memorized. Reading 10 lines at a time and having a photographic memory, this was an enviable talent. After Liamping was strengthened, he gained this talent. However, this was the first time he memorized so many things in a short period of time to learn a language. Half an hour later, Liamping closed the dictionary and closed his eyes. The words in his mind jumped out one after another. Black said, "How is it? Have you memorized all of them?" Liamping did not speak. After a long time, he opened his eyes. There was a flash of understanding in his eyes as he said, "About 70%. It's just pure memory. However, I should be able to understand what they are saying. Ordinary conversations should not be a problem." Hee. Then when are you going to make your move? This is the address written here. But now it seems that on the surface, this is just a prostitution business. I'm afraid that the deal with the abducted girls is at a deeper level. Oh, should I use Dong Man's introduction? No need. After all, he is not someone to be trusted. Li Onping shook his head and looked at the colorful diamond street, with people coming and going. Now that I can understand what they are saying, I will naturally be able to find them. If I want to catch all of Lone Wolf in one fell swoop, I have to secretly find all the members from the bottom to the top. Then I have to clean them up from top to bottom. I want to not let any of them go. Let's find them first. As he spoke, Li Onping stood up and walked towards the window on the street. He walked and stopped. Although every woman kept throwing flirtatious glances at him, he did not stop at all. He looked at dozens of women as if he was looking at flowers on horseback. He just frowned and shook his head in disdain. He looked dissatisfied. Handsome, come in and play. As if attracting the attention of others, a woman with heavy makeup and a hot body leaned against the door and called out to Li Onping. Don't come out, you old vegetable. Li Onping glanced at her and scolded. Don't you have anything new here? The woman's face changed after being scolded, but she still tried to persuade him. Handsome, come in first. I have a lot of good sisters. They are all fair and have big breasts. Handsome, come in and take a look. Get lost, old vegetable. If I go in, you have to give me money. The two's strange behavior had already attracted the attention of passers-by. Li Onping looked at a few people pointing at them and scolding them a few more times before leaving. The woman looked at Li Onping's back and could not help but scold him in a low voice. Popper, why are you still pretending to be rich here? Li Onping stopped and immediately turned around. He pointed at the woman's nose and scolded. Who are you talking about? Who the F***ck are you talking about? Say it again. I'm talking about who's pretending. The woman was also angry. She put her hands on her hips and pointed at Li Onping while scolding him. Li Onping did not show any weakness and scolded the woman with a red neck. Both of them were very loud and soon attracted the attention of passers-by. A few minutes later, two men, one tall and one short, rushed over. They grabbed Li Onping's arm and took him away. After the quarrel ended, the crowd quickly dispersed. Only a few people looked at Li Onping, who was being taken away with pity in their eyes. Let me go. What do you want? Where are you taking me? If you don't let me go, I'll call the police. Li Onping shouted and waved his hands hard, but he could not break free from the two men's arms. The three people pushed and shoved each other and walked into a side alley. One of the tall and thin men pushed Li Onping and pushed him against the wall. He pointed at his forehead and shouted, Boy, who allowed you to come here and make trouble? Do you know whose territory this is? Another short man stood behind Li Onping with his arms crossed in front of his chest and looked at Li Onping maliciously. The tall and thin man punched Li Onping in the stomach and threatened, You just made us do at least 5 less business. Take out 1,000 yuan. Quick! Li Onping leaned against the wall and held his stomach with both hands. He said weakly, I don't have that much money. Don't talk nonsense. Take it out. The tall and thin man punched Li Onping again. Li Onping whimpered and trembled as he pulled out his wallet from his arms. Halfway through, it was snatched away by the tall and thin man. You're lucky. Don't let me see you again. The tall and thin man took out all the money in the wallet and showed a trace of joy. Then, he threw his wallet on the ground and spat on Li Onping's face before walking away. He walked to the short man and gave him half of the money. The two men looked at each other and nodded. While walking, the two men talked in Ningxi. This kind of xia pig. A few more every day would be good. Go back quickly. Don't let Barto change the cards. The two men gradually left the alley, but they did not notice that in the darkness, a pair of cold eyes were watching them. Chapter 34. After extorting Li Onping, the two thugs returned to a small house at the corner of Diamond Street. In addition to the tall and short duo, there were also 2 burly men. When he saw that the 2 of them had returned, he urged them to sit down and continue the unfinished game of cards. The 4 of them played cards and drank beer. Barto, you didn't secretly change your cards when we weren't here, did you? F***ck off. Vic, hurry up and show us your cards. I'm going to win all your shorts today. The 4 of them continued to talk in Hindustani. However, they didn't notice that a black shadow was lurking outside the house. He was monitoring the movements of the four of them. Black asked, "What are they talking about?" "Nothing. The skinny guy is called Vic, and the strong guy is called Barto. They're talking about a soccer match, female celebrities, and—" Liamping frowned. "They scolded me." Hee hee. Black smiled. "Just charge in and torture them to find out who their boss is. Then kill them all. I told you, I don't want to let any of them go." Liamping's expression was cold. "So I can't alert them. I have to find their leader first, or confirm all their members, and then kill them one by one. I said I won't let any of them go. So 10, 5, or one less won't do." Black was stunned and then smiled. Okay. Kill them all. Don't let any of them go. Don't disappoint me." Inside the house, the skinny guy won a few more games and put the money away with a smile. A strong man said angrily, "Vic, you didn't cheat, did you?" "Barto, you can't afford to lose. Don't play anymore." Vic smiled. "I'll treat you tomorrow. Those bitches are boring. The good we snatch are good and pretty enough." "Barto, shut your mouth." Another man said curiously, "Vic, I heard that you ked a kidnapped girl until she was foaming at the mouth. Is it true?" "Ha ha." Vic laughed with a smug look on his face. "That woman kept begging for mercy, licking me while begging me to let her go. Ha ha ha. Desia's women are indeed more tender and obedient than ours. It feels so good to do them. You guys want to play too? Don't worry, you guys work hard here first. In the future, if there are any extra goods above, you guys can play with them." Outside the house, Li Onping clenched his fists and slowly relaxed them. Just like that, the two of them maintained their stealth until 6 o'clock in the morning. The four people in the house went out a few times, either to eat or to teach the brothel's customers a lesson. However, they never talked about the information that Li Onping needed. For example, who was his superior, where was he, and how to find him. Another round of cards came to an end. Skinny Vic stood up and stretched. "I'm so tired. I'm going back to rest. You guys continue with your work. See you tonight." "See you tonight." Seeing Vic walk out of the room, Lianping's eyes lit up and he followed him. The morning in Jadeite City was foggy due to the severe air pollution. Walking on the empty street, Vic didn't know why, but he suddenly felt a little afraid. Damn it, the air quality here is getting worse. If this goes on, I'll get lung cancer one day. Vic walked while covering his mouth with one hand, hoping that he wouldn't breathe in too much poison. But halfway through, a black shadow suddenly appeared in the fog in front of him, slowly walking towards him. "Who is it? Who's there?" Vic roared in alarm. No one replied, and Vic could only hear the footsteps getting closer and closer. This was Jadeite City. For safety's sake, he pulled out a pistol from his belt and unlocked it. His eyes were fixed on the direction that the black figure was coming from. A few seconds later, a 9 or 10-year-old boy walked out of the fog and saw Vic aiming at him. "Don't shoot. Don't shoot. I'm just here to deliver newspapers." Vic glanced at the boy's thin and weak body and tattered clothes. He glanced at the stack of newspapers on the boy's back and put away his pistol. He cursed, "Damn it. Why didn't you answer when I called you?" "I was afraid of getting into trouble," the boy explained and ran away as if he was afraid that Vic would pull out his gun and shoot him again. Seeing the boy so scared that he almost peed himself, Vic laughed heartlessly. The Xia people are so timid. Halfway through his words, a pair of arms suddenly stretched out from behind him and dragged him into the fog. "Ow! Wah!" Vic struggled with all his strength, but a great force came over him, and he fainted. In a daze, Vic gradually regained consciousness. He opened his eyes, which were still a little blurry. He struggled hard and found that he was tied to a chair. He shook his dizzy head, and the scene in front of him gradually became clear. In a simple bedroom, a tall and strong young man sat in front of him. The young man was holding a book and reading it seriously. It was as if he didn't notice that Vic had woken up. From Vic's angle, he could see that the cover of the book seemed to say, "The Art of Interrogation. It looks familiar. This place." Liamping put down the book and saw Vic's vigilant look. He said calmly, "This is the bedroom you used to lock them up. But now that you're gone, I'll borrow it." Seeing that Vic didn't say anything, Li Onping didn't care. He raised the book in his hand and said, "This book was prepared for you. but I was a little disappointed. It's too mild. It's a published book. It's mainly psychological and verbal attacks. I think you'll be very disappointed if I use these things on you. It's you? Who are you? You want to take revenge on me? Vic seemed to recognize that Li Onping was the person he had blackmailed and beaten up yesterday. He said angrily, "Lone Wolf won't let you go." Li Onping only smiled. Later on, I want to download some information from the internet. Some of the interrogation methods on it are very interesting. As he spoke, Li Onping took out a stack of information from his backpack and started reading. Stick punishment is the wooden stake punishment. The stick punishment here isn't hitting people with a stick. The stick punishment here is to take a stick and stick it directly into a person's mouth or anus. The whole stick goes in and pierces the intestines, making the person die in agony. And here, a needle is inserted under the fingernails. Oh, and this electrocution. It's really non-toxic and harmless. Hearing Li Onping's list of torture methods, Vic didn't react. He just looked at him with contempt. Li Onping stopped and walked in front of Vic. He said slowly, "We still have 12 hours before your next shift at Diamond Street. In other words, no one will realize that you've been kidnapped for at least 12 hours. We have a lot of time to play. However, I'll give you a chance to suffer less. Tell me, who's your leader? Where is he?" Vic just glared at Li Onping and spat on Li Onping's chest. Li Onping looked at Vic coldly. He tore off a piece of his clothes and wiped off the saliva on his body. Then, ignoring Vic's struggle, he crushed the cloth into a ball and stuffed it into his mouth. What a pity. The materials here are so crude. Let's start with the fingers. With that, Li Onping picked up Vic's hand and pulled out his little finger. He held Vic's finger with his right hand and slowly tightened his grip. The sound of bones breaking could be heard. Then, the veins on Vic's forehead bulged as he struggled violently. Unfortunately, he was tied up. Li Onping's other hand was also on his body. He couldn't escape at all. He could only watch as his finger was crushed into a bloody mess. Li Onping took the cloth out of Vic's mouth and asked, "How many strongholds do you have in Jadeite City, where the female slaves sold?" "You're crazy," Wei Qi angrily roared. "I swear that I'll definitely kill you. We won't let you off. We'll capture all of your female relatives and sell them to the dirtiest, most inferior brothel. We'll make them woo-woo." Before he could finish, Li Onping stuffed his mouth again. Li Onping sneered and said, "Looks like you haven't learned your lesson." With that, Fang Xingjiang grabbed Vic's other ring finger and slowly pinched it down. Vic shook his head fiercely and bellowed in his heart, "No, no, no, no." However, Li Onping still pressed it down. Intense pain assaulted Vic's body, and his entire body arched up. Tears kept flowing out his eyes, and he let out a cry from his gagged mouth. Woo! There were sounds of struggling. "I don't have much patience. You'd better answer me quickly. For example, where are the girls that you've locked up?" Vic, who had his cloth removed, could only gasp for air as he felt the piercing pain coming from his fingers. Looking at his two fingers that had turned into meat paste and bone fragments, Vic looked at Li Onping with eyes filled with terror. "I don't know anything. I really only came here the day before yesterday. I didn't do anything." Li Onping shook his head regretfully. "I'm sorry, Vic. That's not what you said when I heard you playing cards yesterday. For example, did the girl that you killed remind you of anything?" With that, Li Onping ignored Vic's explanation and stuffed his mouth shut again. This time, he held Vic's middle finger and index finger and looked at him. Vic struggled with all his might, shaking his head incessantly with a pleading look in his eyes. Woo-woo. Li Onping ignored him and exerted force with his right hand, causing blood to spurt out from his palm. When he let go of his hand, blood kept flowing out from Vic's palm. The owner of the finger was in so much pain that his eyes had turned white, and he was on the verge of fainting. Li Onping's expression did not change at all. He only removed the cloth from Vic's mouth. "You'd better say something that I want to hear. There are only a total of 2 slave markets. One is on Diamond Street, and the other is on Paradise Road. There are only these 2, I swear." "Then what about your leader? Where is he?" "I don't know." Vic saw that Li Onping was about to stuff the cloth into his mouth again. He quickly shouted, I really don't know. He's been hiding recently. I beg you. I beg you. I really don't know. Lianping ignored him and stuffed the cloth into Vic's mouth. Then, he held Vic's middle finger and index finger together. Lianping exerted a little force, and the two fingers gradually deformed. Woo-woo. Woo-woo. Vic struggled and shook his head at Lianping. In his agitation, more blood flowed out from his injured hand. Lianping snorted and let go of his hand. He took the cloth from Vic's mouth and said, "You'd better say something useful." Vic cried, "Paradise Road. It's all on Paradise Road. Apart from some supply channels, the boss has gathered everyone on Paradise Road recently. He said that he's going to do something big. That's all I know. I beg you, let me go. I beg you." Vic waved his bare hand and looked pitifully at Lianping. Lianping just shook his head. "Go tell those girls after you go to hell." Then, a series of screams came from Vic's room. A few seconds later, the screams stopped abruptly, and Lianping walked out covered in blood. Chapter 35. In a basement on Diamond Street, Lianping followed two Indian men to the elevator. One of them asked, "Sir, is this your first time here?" "Yes," Vic introduced me. "He said that there's an auction here every night." Lianping said in fluent Indian, "I didn't expect to be able to buy female slaves into Sia. I'm really excited." Hearing Lianping mention Vic and his fluent Indian, the man seemed to be more at ease. He introduced, "Sir, that's because you chose the right place. There's no dish you can't find in our Lone Wolf's auction. Wives, students, models, and even trained female slaves and beauties. We can tailor all of them for you. You could tell us your requirements. What kind of dish do you want to find? Figure, height, and appearance can all be mentioned." "Oh, can all be mentioned?" Lianping said in disbelief. "Can you find any woman here?" The man laughed. Because we accept advance reservations. As long as you ask for it and pay enough money, we can definitely find it for you. Not only that, we also offer related training commissions. Sir, not only can you ask for their appearance, you can also ask for their temperament. Whether you want the mature type, the youthful type, or the masochistic type, we can satisfy you." Lianping sighed. "That's really amazing. I wonder who's behind Lone Wolf. If they didn't have a strong background, they would have died 10 times over." Lianping asked the question in his heart. If Lone Wolf could really do this, then the power behind him was obviously more dangerous than Lianping imagined. "Sir, we naturally have our own power." The man naturally wouldn't tell Lianping so easily. He smiled mysteriously and said, "We're here, sir. Have a good day." The elevator door opened, and under the illumination of the lights, a stage appeared in front of Lianping. He walked out of the elevator and found that the round tables below the stage were already filled with people. Then, a waiter walked in front of him and led him to an empty seat. On the way, he asked if he needed a mask. Only then did Lianping realize that under the dark stage, almost everyone was wearing a mask. Obviously, they did not want others to know their identities. Lianping took the white mask from the waiter and put it on before sitting down. He looked at the stage and listened to the sound around him. He found that the people around him seemed to have no interest in the conversation, and there was almost no sound of talking. They were either looking at their phones, in a daze, or watching the juggling performance on the stage. As for the back of the stage, it seemed to be soundproof. Lianping had no way to hear the sound from there. Thus, he patiently waited for the auction to begin. Behind the stage, a man with slick-back hair was sitting on a deck chair, smoking a cigar. There were several bodyguards in black standing beside him. Suddenly, a waiter rushed in and shouted in Inchi language, big brother, bad news. Lu Hao-Ian and Jia Lan had a quarrel, and Jia Lan was killed." "What's the rush?" The man with slick-back hair stood up and said disdainfully, "The one who died is not Jia Lan. He's a dead man. Just send someone to throw him into the dustbin." The man with slick-back hair was called Kodo, and he was Lone Wolf's second in command. He was in charge of the slave market on Diamond Street. Although Lone Wolf's main force had been concentrated on Paradise Street, he was still in charge of the business on Diamond Street. One of his men asked, "What should we do if the Kieran group investigates?" Kodo said impatiently, What's there to investigate? If they want to investigate, let them go to the loyalty hall. It's none of our business. I didn't kill him. After saying that, he no longer cared about the matter. Instead, he was thinking about Lone Wolf's recent actions. During this period of time, Lone Wolf's leader had placed almost all of his focus on the matter at Paradise Street. He had gathered all of his men there and had even taken away a group of high-quality girls. This had directly caused the businesses of the other places to either close down or barely survive. Even at Diamond Street, because the quality of the goods was getting lower and lower, people began to criticize them. Kodo also began to worry. What the hell is the boss doing? If this goes on, it will be troublesome if other forces interfere with our business. In addition, Kodo was also annoyed by the Loyalty Hall's alliance with Violet to fight the Kirin group. Not only did it affect their business, but both sides kept asking them to join, but Lone Wolf's leader remained neutral. Kodo absolutely did not agree with this. In the end, the only thing a neutral party would have to face was the anger of the winner. Moreover, based on the recent news, Fang Chi's combat power was very strong. He was probably invincible in Lone Wolf. The Loyalty Hall was not as simple as it seemed. Their boss, the father of Lu Haoyan, who had caused trouble at the auction house, was named Lu Jun. It was rumored that this person had once fought the great Xia Dragonfinch head-on. However, the higher-ups of the Dark World knew that Lu Jun was just blowing his own trumpet. He had indeed fought with the Grand Xia Dragonfinch before, but he was only severely injured by a small soldier of the enemy. The Xia Dragonfinch's 3 leaders, Long Xiang, Zhurong, and the Flying General, were all existences that could destroy cities. If Lu Jun could really survive a fight with any of them, no one would fight with him in Emerald City. However, his opponent was the Xia Dragonfinch, so Lu Jun's strength was still worthy of recognition. Moreover, his performance in Emerald City had not disappointed anyone. As for Violet, the multinational group, their strength was naturally not to be underestimated. It was said that they had already asked for help from the headquarters, and masters would be sent over soon. Kodo sighed. He only hoped that the boss really had some hidden trump card that could prevent them from being destroyed by these 3 forces. Could it really be the Shadow Cult? Kodo subconsciously thought of the rumor. At this moment, the waiter suddenly rushed in and shouted, Not good, boss. What now? Before Kodo could finish his sentence, he heard a series of screams coming from the auction hall. 10 minutes ago, in the auction hall, just after Lianping sat down, a few guests came out of the elevator one after another. All of them had put on masks before coming out of the elevator. Obviously, they came here often. Black asked, You want to wait for all the customers to arrive before you act? These people bidding for the female slaves are obviously not good people. I'll wait a little longer and kill them all. Lianping, were getting more and more bloodthirsty. Lianping was stunned. Just when he was about to refute, the elevator door opened again. A very fat, dumb, and ball-like man walked in. This man did not wear a mask, and as soon as he came in, he attracted almost everyone's attention. This was because he was holding 2 naked women in his hands. The 2 women's hair was messy, and their eyes were dull. There were traces of sexual assault all over their bodies. It was obvious that they had suffered serious mental and physical damage. For a moment, everyone's eyes were attracted to the 2 naked women. The whole hall was filled with whispers. Look, it's the finale of last month's auction. Twin beauties. This fat man is really rich. He's Lu Haoyan, the only son of the boss of the Loyalty Hall. This is a piece of cake. Someone said enviously, TSK, those twin beauties are really good. Even Lone Wolf can only see them once a year. Sigh, what a waste for such good stuff to be given to this fatty. On the other side, the fat man, Lu Haoyan, was picking his nose. He kicked the beauty under his feet and scolded. Go away. You had fun with Wang Kai at home today, didn't you? Hurry up and crawl, or I'll send you to the doghouse. When the beauty under his feet heard this, her body trembled and she quickly crawled forward. The other beauty kept rubbing her body against Lu Haoyan. It seemed that she was trying to please him and plead for her sister. Lu Haoyan held the 2 beauties' hands and swaggered toward the empty table closest to the stage. It was obvious that he had reserved a long time ago. A man suddenly stood up, pointed at Lu Haotian, and said, "Fatty, I'll buy these two beauties. Name a price." As soon as he said that, he saw that the whispers around him stopped. They all stared at the man with wide eyes, as if to say, "Are you an idiot?" "Huh?" Lu Haotian stopped and turned to look at the man. "You call me Fatty? What Fatty?" "I'm Fastblade Jialan of the Kirin Group. Think about it carefully. Are you going to sell me or not?" The man asked arrogantly, as if he had unsheathed his long blade. "It's Fastblade Jialan," someone said in a low voice. Someone whispered in surprise, "Is the #1 swordsman in the Kirin Group. Legend has it that he can cut open bullets with his blade." Someone was looking forward to watching the show. "It's him. This is going to be a good show. The Loyalty Hall and the Kirin Group have always been at odds. This is going to be a fierce battle." Fang Qi defeated the 4 heavenly kings of the Loyalty Hall not long ago. Lu Haotian will give in this time. Hearing the whispers around him, Fastblade Jialan looked at Lu Haotian with a smug look. Lu Haotian, on the other hand, didn't care about it at all. "Fatty, how dare you call me Fatty?" Lu Haotian roared. "No one is allowed to call me Fatty." After saying that, Lu Haotian's body suddenly expanded. His ball-like body became even fatter and bigger. Then, he rushed over like a cannonball. "Damn Fatty. Don't blame me if you want to die." Fastblade Jialan cursed. He pulled out his long blade and slashed at Lu Haotian. However, when the long blade hit Lu Haotian's body, there was a strange force. The blade was blocked by Lu Haotian's fat, but it couldn't penetrate his flesh at all. In the next moment, Lu Haotian slammed him and his blade into the wall. After a loud bang, only a human-shaped pile of flesh was left on the wall. It was slowly falling to the ground. Everyone in the auction house was shocked. They seemed to have been frightened by Lu Haotian's shocking destructive power. Several people who had come with Fastblade Jialan saw that one of their own had been killed by Lu Haotian in one hit. They immediately gave up on the idea of revenge. They sat down quietly and didn't say anything. A few minutes later, several staff members came out from the back of the auction house and swept the body on the wall into a trash can. As for Fastblade Jialan, who had been so mighty a few minutes ago, he would be forgotten in a few days. "Bastard, how dare you call me Fatty? Even my dad can't call me that." Lu Haotian picked his nose and walked back to where he was. He took the 2 beautiful dogs and walked to their seats. The 2 beautiful dogs seemed to be very afraid of Lu Haotian when he was angry. They trembled when they were being held by him. They kept running back and forth and barking to please him. Liamping looked away, but there seemed to be a red light slowly brewing in his eyes. Black gloated. "I can feel that the fire in your heart can burn the entire Jadeite city. This is the eternal foolishness and greed of humans." Liamping said coldly, "Yeah, once everyone is here, I'll make my move. I don't want to wait for even a minute or a second." After waiting for a while, some customers came down one after another. The auction finally began. A well-dressed host walked onto the stage and began to introduce the items. "Thank you for attending today's auction. Today, our catalog is on the table in front of you. All right, let's not waste any more time. Let's welcome the first item on the stage." Before he could finish, a chair suddenly flew up. With a whistling sound, the chair's leg stabbed into the host's eye socket. He then fell down with a shocked face. Chapter 36. As the host fell down, a series of gasps rang out. Liamping also stood up, took off his mask, and walked onto the stage. Along the way, 2 of Lone Wolf's attendants tried to stop him, but he casually slit their necks, causing them to fall into a pool of blood. Looking at the somewhat restless crowd below the stage, Li Onping laughed. "Dregs, I'm here to kill you. Before you die, please resist as much as you want." "What? What kind of joke is this? We're a Lone Wolf's men. This is too outrageous." Another few Lone Wolf's gunmen rushed over. This time, they were holding pistols and slowly approached Li Onping. Clearly, the way Li Onping had killed earlier had alerted them. Put your hands on your head. Walk down slowly. In response, Li Onping only smiled. He casually tossed the microphone on the stage toward the gunman. Amidst the whistling sound, the gunman's head exploded like a watermelon that had fallen to the ground. I'll personally send you to hell to repent. The next moment, gunshots rang out. Li Onping did not care at all, allowing the bullets to pierce through his body. Then, he watched as the wounds slowly healed. Only when a small number of bullets shot toward his face did he subconsciously use his hand to block them. Taking a step with his right foot, he had already left the stage and appeared in the crowd. One after another, people pulled out their pistols and aimed at Li Onping. Among them were Lone Wolf's men, customers, and customers' bodyguards. Bullets rained down, but Li Onping casually dodged them. He charged into the crowd, his hands either twisting necks or piercing hearts, continuously causing death. Amidst loud laughter, a round table suddenly flew up. Li Onping waved it around like a toy, and finally threw it out, bringing about a rain of blood in the crowd. Not far away, the elevator door opened, and another group of gunmen charged in with submachine guns. All of their muzzles were aimed at Li Onping. They spewed out deadly fire snakes, riddling Li Onping's body with holes and causing him to retreat continuously. Roar! Li Onping roared. With a light leap, he jumped into the middle of the gunmen. Like a phantom, more than a dozen gunmen fell down with blood spurting out. Looking at the remaining gunmen looking at him in despair, Li Onping smiled. He reached his hand into one of the gunmen's heart, pulled it out, and crushed it. Amidst the screams, he casually tore another person into two halves. Blood rained down on him, dyeing his body red. However, there was still a tyrannical voice calling out to him in his heart. Kill! Kill them to your heart's content. These beasts don't deserve to live in this world. A gunman roared and rushed toward him while firing. Li Onping flashed slightly and appeared behind him. He grabbed the gunman's skull with one hand and twisted the man's head 180 degrees. Gunshots rang out from behind him again. Li Onping lifted the body of the gunman who had turned 180 degrees and threw him towards the roof. Bang! A large amount of flesh and blood fell from the sky. Screams and cries could be heard in the venue. The entire auction house was in chaos. The remaining gunmen shouted and fired at Li Onping. However, even when they ran out of bullets, they couldn't stop him for even a second. Li Onping's hands brought death to the crowd one after another. Bullets kept passing through his body, but they couldn't cause any fatal injuries. Often, the wounds would heal in a few seconds, and the person who fired the gun would be killed by Li Onping in the next second. Either their hearts would be dug out or torn to pieces. It all depended on Li Onping's mood. Another group of gunmen rushed into the venue. The leader was carrying a rocket launcher. Looking at the man pulling the trigger, Li Onping casually threw the round table next to him. In the air, boom, a fiery flower bloomed in the hall. After the violent explosion, the shock wave swept over all the people in the surroundings, and a large number of people fell to the ground. Li Onping, on the other hand, was only dizzy for a moment. He was unscathed. The shrapnel on his body was squeezed out by his muscles after a few seconds. More than a dozen guests near the explosion were bleeding from their 7 orifices. They had been shaken to death. Li Onping dodged another hail of bullets. He charged in an S shape toward the gunmen who were still resisting. Facing the desperate wails of the gunmen, Li Onping grabbed a gunman and swung him around. Like a storm of death, the surrounding gunmen were all swept away. A series of screams rang out, like a symphony from hell. When Li Onping stopped, the corpse in his hand had become a pile of unrecognizable flesh. Ha 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 ha. You're all going to die today. Die, 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 scum. Finally, all the gunmen realized that something was wrong. They began to scream and run with the people in the hall. The venue had become a living hell, but Li Onping chased after everyone who tried to escape. He threw the chairs and tables around him out of the way, smashing them to death. Ordinary people were as fragile as toys in front of him. At that moment, a round ball of flesh rushed toward Li Onping. Who do you want to kill, kid? It was Liu Haoyan. He held his head with both hands and shot toward Li Onping like a bomb. Li Onping roared and threw a punch at Lu Haoyan. Lu Haoyan took several steps back amidst the deafening noise, while Li Onping was sent flying all of a sudden. Another loud noise was heard as Li Onping crashed into the wall and was buried by a large amount of sand and rubble. Li Onping's head was dizzy. Only Black's voice kept ringing in his head. It was so noisy that it gave him a headache. Aptitude user. It's an aptitude user. Eat him. Hurry up and eat him. We'll become stronger if we eat him. Shut up. Before Li Onping could react, Lu Haoyan had already rushed in front of him. He grabbed his neck and threw him over his head. With a loud bang, his body was once again smashed into the wall on the roof. Pain swept through him like a tidal wave. The 2 consecutive hits had at least broken all the bones in his body. His internal organs were bleeding profusely, and his brain was concussed. Black, who was next to him, shouted, "Be careful. He can switch his body fat between muscles and fat. Don't fight him with strength." "You're too late to remind me." After saying that, Li Onping's body moved. He left the wall and flashed to the ground. After a loud noise, Lu Haoyan slowly retracted his fist and landed on the spot where he had been standing. There was only a huge crater left. "UF Asterisk King, fat pig. You hurt me." Li Onping touched his chest and spat out another mouthful of blood. From the outside, he looked extremely miserable. Not only were there all kinds of abrasions and scratches, but there were also a few bleeding wounds. White bones were also rolled out and mixed with the blood and flesh that had spattered on his body. He looked like he was half dead. The people who were running away saw Li Onping get beaten up by Lu Haoyan. They stopped and cheered, thinking that the situation was under control. Someone shouted, "Hurry up and kill him. This guy dares to fight in the auction house. Young Master Lu, don't kill him. Let him stay. We'll play with him until he dies." Some people began to get angry. "He really scared me to death. Who sent him? We must investigate thoroughly. All related personnel must be held responsible." Li Onping and Lu Haoyan, who were in the auction house, ignored them. Lu Haoyan's eyes were red as he stared at Li Onping. He gasped and said, "Trash you. You dare to call me a fat pig? I'm going to kill you." As soon as he finished speaking, his body tensed up. The fat on his body had already turned into muscles. He then charged at Li Onping with incredible momentum. As Lu Haoyan ran, the entire hall trembled. A huge gust of wind was brought along by Lu Haoyan's body, blowing Li Onping's hair into a mess. Li Onping endured the pain in his body when he saw Lu Haoyan rushing toward him. He dodged Lu Haoyan's attack, but Lu Haoyan did not let him go. Lu Haoyan turned slightly and tried to hit him again. However, Li Onping rolled away and dodged the attack. However, Lu Haoyan's brain did not seem to work very well. He was determined to hit Li Onping to death. Therefore, he tried to hit Li Onping again, but Li Onping easily dodged all of his attacks. Seeing that Li Onping was getting more and more relaxed and faster, the angry looks on the guests' faces gradually disappeared. Some of them were even scared. What's going on? How did his injuries get better again? Ultra-rapid regeneration. He has the ability to regenerate quickly. As they shouted, a few people ran toward the elevator. However, before they could take a few steps, a chair flew toward them and hit them in the head. They fell to the ground, and their legs twitched a few times before they stopped moving. Li Onping's demonic voice was heard. "I'll kill whoever runs first." An astonishing, murderous aura swept over. It was as if someone was blowing cold air behind their necks. Cold sweat kept coming out, and everyone who wanted to run stopped. That murderous aura was generated from Li Onping's body after he killed hundreds of people. No one expected Li Onping to be able to observe the situation of the other people in the hall while fighting Lu Haoyan. Lu Haoyan was so angry that he screamed. Steam was coming out of his body. With a roar, his body grew bigger again, and he rushed toward Li Onping. There are too many openings. At that moment, Li Onping, who had recovered from his injuries, had decided to end the fight. Lu Haoyan had too many openings. If he had known about Lu Haoyan's abilities in the beginning, he would not have been injured when he fought Lu Haoyan. He looked at Lu Haoyan, who was rushing toward him, expressionlessly. He moved his feet and dodged Lu Haoyan's attack, appearing next to him. Then, he shouted and activated his explosive state. His body suddenly grew to more than 2 meters, and his strength was greatly increased. He punched Lu Haoyan's empty back. Kaboom! Lu Haoyan could not stop at all due to the impact of his own body and Li Onping's all-out punch. He crashed into the wall like a meteor. They were underground, and the walls around them were solid. Lu Haoyan's crash created a big hole. Dust flew up as he fell to the ground with his head bleeding. His mind was in a mess. Although you have a lot of strength, it was temporarily converted from your fat. You're seriously lacking in control. In other words, you can't control this temporarily increased strength at all. It's already difficult for you to turn around, let alone stop. Li Onping walked toward Lu Haoyan, who was lying on the ground, and thought to himself, why did I feel like some kind of power blocked my attack for him when I hit his back? It was the same when he attacked me for the first time. The power he exerted was much more than I expected him to. However, Li Onping thought about it and felt that it might be the energy and power unique to Lu Haoyan's ability, just like his soul power. Therefore, he walked in front of Lu Haoyan. Li Onping squatted down as he looked at Lu Haoyan, who was still struggling to get up with his eyes trembling. I wanted to kill you when I saw you just now. You really make me sick. Li Onping clenched his fist and said to Lu Haoyan, goodbye, fat pig. I'll take your power. Boom, boom, boom. Li Onping punched Lu Haoyan's head 3 times in a row. After the 3 punches, Lu Haoyan was directly smashed to the ground. However, Li Onping felt a rebound of power again. This time, it was even more obvious. Those 3 punches should have killed Lu Haoyan. However, although Lu Haoyan's aura became weaker, he was still alive. What kind of energy is this? It's very resistant. Li Onping snorted coldly and punched Lu Haoyan a few more times. Continuous rumbling sounds were heard. Everyone in the hall watched in horror as Li Onping punched Lu Haoyan's head again and again. The sound was as loud as a pile driver. Finally, a crisp sound was heard. Lu Haoyan, who was still moving slightly, was no longer breathing. His entire head was completely deformed and twisted. Even his mother would not be able to recognize him. Li Onping shook his hand and threw the white and red liquid on his arm to the ground. After absorbing Lu Haoyan's soul, he felt waves of powerful energy entering his body. His body, which had not grown for a long time, was once again growing in an incredible direction. He laughed and said, ha ha ha. Strength 3. 4. Speed 2. 2. Stamina 4. 1. Li Onping, this pig is so delicious to eat. In the silence, the people on the side looked at Li Onping in disbelief. They could not believe that Lu Haoyan had been killed just like that. However, the crowd went crazy after a few seconds. They screamed in pain and looked hysterical. It seemed that they were even more terrified than when Li Onping went on a killing spree. B** starred. Do you know what you've done? You killed Lu Jun's son, the only son of the leader of the Loyalty Hall. D** M in it. D** M in it. D** M in it. We're all going to die now. You're going to make us all die with you. Lu Jun loves to vent his anger. He won't even let our families go. No, I don't want to fall into Lu Jun's hands. You be starred, I'll kill you. After saying that, a middle-aged man suddenly raised his gun and rushed toward Li Onping. Li Onping only glanced at him, then flashed to his side and broke his neck. The middle-aged man's headless corpse ran for another 4 or 5 steps before falling to the ground with blood spurting out. At that moment, the crowd seemed to realize that compared to Lu Jun, Li Onping seemed to have their lives in his hands. However, Li Onping ignored them. He rushed into the crowd again and killed another 2 people with a punch and a kick. Among the remaining people, some gave up resisting, while others fainted on the ground. Regardless, Li Onping punched them all. When the last man was left, he held his head with both hands and burst into tears. He looked at Li Onping with a broken face. Ha, dead. They're all dead. You'll die too. The Loyalty Hall won't let you go. Lone Wolf's people won't let you go either. You'll die 1,000 times worse than us. Don't worry, I'll send them all to hell to accompany you." After saying that, Li Onping punched the man's head. "You two come out. I'll clean up the other places first. You two wait here," Li Onping said to Lu Haoyan's twin beauties. Looking at the two girls trembling and unable to move, he shook his head and walked toward the stage. "You two wait for me here. I'll come find you after I kill the rest." Chapter 37. Li Onping was about to walk to the back of the stage, but a group of people had already walked out from behind the stage. The leader of the group, Kodo, was livid, and the veins on his forehead were throbbing. He did not expect that someone would dare to cause trouble in Lone Wolf's territory. However, when he saw the corpses all over the floor in the hall, he almost fainted. He did not expect Li Onping to be so nimble. He had heard the commotion backstage and knew that the gunman could not handle it, so he immediately rushed over. In less than 2 minutes, Li Onping had killed everyone in the hall. He did not dare to imagine how the chief would punish him. When he saw Lu Haoyan's fat body lying on the ground in the corner, his face became even more bitter. He looked at Li Onping with hatred and said, "Who are you, kid? How dare you come here to cause trouble? Do you know how much trouble you've caused?" Li Onping ignored him. He listened carefully and thought, there should only be a few people left in the stronghold. It seems that the leader is the one in charge. I'll keep him alive to ask for information and kill the rest. Then I'll call the police and ask them to rescue all the female slaves behind the stage. "Hey, kid, did you hear what I asked you?" Kodo's expression was uncertain. He looked at Lu Haoyan on the ground and then looked at Li Onping. His clothes were tattered and covered in blood, but he did not seem to have any wounds. Although Lu Haoyan was a good-for-nothing rich kid, he was also a superpower user. Yet, he was killed by the kid in front of him. Lu Haoyan was not the only one. Many people present had guns and cannons. Someone had even fired a rocket launcher, but none of them could kill the kid. This made Kodo hesitate for a moment. However, just as he was about to test Li Onping and say something, Li Onping disappeared in the blink of an eye. When he looked again, Li Onping was already in front of him. Then, he felt a pain in his chest and was sent flying. In the midst of the gunshots, Kodo could only see Li Onping moving like a ghost, circling around his subordinates, causing them to fall one by one. At this moment, how could Kodo not know what the other party was planning? He twisted his waist in midair and landed on the ground with a somersault. When he looked up, he saw Li Onping rushing towards him. After all, he was one of Lone Wolf's leaders. He had been fighting in Jadeite City for many years and was very experienced. He didn't panic, nor did he act impulsively like Lu Haoyan. When he saw Li Onping rushing over, he quickly retreated, wanting to put some distance between them. That guy is very fast and very strong. If he can kill Lu Haoyan with his bare hands, he should be a martial arts master or someone with a mutated body. I can't fight him in close combat. Thinking of this, Kodo took out his pistol and shot at Li Onping as he retreated, stopping him from approaching. Unexpectedly, Li Onping didn't dodge at all. Instead, he took 2 shots from Kodo and arrived in front of him. What? He didn't dodge? Was it a mistake? Or is it his ability? In Kodo's eyes, Li Onping acted as if he hadn't been shot at all. The force in his body wasn't affected at all, and he threw a punch at Kodo's head. Boom! Kodo used both of his hands to block Li Onping's punch. His body flew towards the wall again. Then, he exerted force with his feet and stomped on the wall. His entire body stopped, leaving only cracks on the wall. At the same time, one of his hands hung limply by his side. It was dislocated. Kodo's frown deepened when he saw Li Onping walking towards him slowly. This punch is a little stronger than the first one, but it's definitely not his full strength. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to kill Lu Haoyan. Thinking of this, Kodo narrowed his eyes, and a trace of murderous intent leaked out from them. Is he trying to capture me alive? This guy wants to capture me alive so that he can get information out of me? On the other side, Li Onping looked relaxed, but he was also on high alert. Be careful. I can't absorb his soul. He's also an ability user. Lianping looked at Kodo and took in a deep breath. Ability user? Why didn't he use his ability to fight me? Is he trying to test me? Or is it that the conditions for him to activate his ability are very strict? Looking at Kodo's dislocated arm, Lianping shook his head. Could it be that it's a non-combat type ability? There were many types of abilities, and not all of them could be used for combat or killing. Therefore, it wasn't out of Lianping's expectations that he would encounter an ability user who didn't have any combat-type abilities. It was a pity that he didn't know enough about ability users, so he couldn't make an effective judgment of the situation before him. In any case, I'll test him carefully while thinking of ways to subdue him. Thinking of this, Lianping kicked off with his hind legs and charged toward Kodo. The huge force brought about gusts of wind pressure, and Kodo didn't even have time to react. He could only rely on his instincts to resist. However, he could only see the shadows of Lianping's fists in his eyes. He protected his vital parts with both hands and assumed a posture that looked like he was ready to be beaten. A few seconds later, he had been punched more than 10 times by Lianping. His whole body was bruised, and he spat out blood. Fortunately, Lianping didn't hit him too hard, so he survived. However, he was basically beaten to a state of near death. Lianping punched Kodo's cheek again and knocked him to the ground. Only then did Lianping stop. Looking at Kodo lying on the ground and unable to stand up, Lianping slightly lost interest. Looks like it's indeed a non-combat type ability. His physical strength isn't that great either. It's very powerful for ordinary people. However, in terms of combat power, it's not even as good as Liu Haoyin. Thinking of this, Lianping grabbed Kodo's neck and lifted him up. He shook his head and asked, "What's your name? What's your identity in Lone Wolf?" "Ha ha." Kodo just laughed and then coughed out a mouthful of blood. Then he said, "You're an ability user, right? Do you know that I'm actually an ability user too?" Lianping's expression changed. His other hand had already pierced into Kodo's chest and grabbed his heart. As soon as he sensed that Kodo was making any movements, he would crush Kodo's heart. You'd better not make any unnecessary attempts. No matter what your ability is, I can crush your heart with just a little force. You don't have the ability to survive if your heart is crushed, do you? Kodo's chest was pierced open. He spat out a few more mouthfuls of blood, and his face became more and more dispirited. However, he still said excitedly, "No one in the entire Jadeite city knows what my ability is. Those who knew about it were already dead. Because if you don't know about this ability of mine, there's no one who can't be killed." Lianping's expression was solemn. He gradually tightened his grip, causing Kodo to feel intense pain. Kodo's expression was contorted from the pain, but he still said, "Everyone who knows about this ability of mine is already dead." Cough, 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 cough. He coughed out a few more mouthfuls of blood, which splashed onto Lianping's body. He said with a pale face, "I told him to transfer the damage. Do you understand?" Lianping's expression changed. He looked at Kodo in disbelief. Kodo's face was filled with complacency. Kodo smiled and said, "Damage transfer, as the name suggests, means that I can transfer the damage I've suffered to others, and I'll be unscathed." Lianping said in disbelief, "How can there be such an ability?" "Hee, you don't believe me? Are you still wondering why I'm telling you about my ability?" Kodo smiled at Lianping, his eyes filled with pity. "It's because there are 5 conditions for me to activate my ability. Firstly, I have to introduce my ability to the person being transfected. Secondly, the person being transfected must come into contact with my blood." Lianping looked at his hands and chest, which were stained with Kodo's blood. He shook his head helplessly. Seeing Lianping's helpless look, Kodo smiled even more complacently. Thirdly, the person being transfected must be a living, conscious human being. Fourthly, this ability can only be activated once a day. And fifth, which is the last one, the target of transfection must be within 3 meters of me. Before he finished speaking, Lianping had already let go of his hand and flung Kodo forward. He used all his strength to jump back, but it was still too late. The moment Lianping exerted his strength, Kodo's ability had already been activated. As soon as he jumped, a heart-wrenching pain spread throughout his body in midair. Lianping was shocked to find that his body had cracked open one after another. The pain hit him like a tidal wave. He fell from midair and landed about 10 meters in front of Lianping. Then there was a hissing sound. Blood kept flowing out of Lianping's wounds, forming a pool of blood at his feet in the blink of an eye. Blurg! With another retching sound, Lianping spat out large mouthfuls of blood. He half-knelt on the ground, but found that he couldn't exert any strength. He couldn't even stand up. This sudden turn of events stunned the twins. They had no idea what was going on. Only Kodo laughed out loud. The more he laughed, the louder he laughed. He laughed until he was out of breath. At this moment, he was completely unharmed. Whether it was the injuries from Lianping's beating, the dislocated hand, or the wound on his chest, they were all gone. Even his face didn't show any signs of weakness. He looked energetic. Other than his messy clothes, he looked no different from when he just came out from the backstage. Chapter 38. You sure are cautious. Many people would think of killing me the moment they hear the conditions, but they would be killed by the transfer after activating their ability. This is your ability? Lianping gasped. Ha, do you understand now? Kodo walked towards Lianping, who was half kneeling on the ground, and picked up a gun from the ground. His footsteps were calm, a faint smile on his face. Looking at Lianping, his eyes were full of mockery. My damage transfer ability doesn't directly transfer my injuries to you. It also calculates the threat of the injury. Just like how I received a fatal injury just now, what you receive now is also a fatal injury. He walked in front of Lianping, pointed the gun at his head, and laughed. Your body is really strong. You've lost so much blood, and you're still not dead? You're a mutated body type ability user, right? You're really strong. If I fight you head-on without using my ability, I'm afraid I'll be killed by you within 10 seconds. But I just need to activate my ability before I die. Speaking of which, you ability users will always stop attacking and listen to me obediently every time I explain my ability. How despicable. Kodo smashed Lianping's head with the butt of his spear. Seeing Lianping's head shake and still half kneeling, Kodo sneered a few times, and then fiercely smashed Lianping's head until Lianping fell into a pool of blood. Only then did Kodo stop, gasping for breath. Fuck, do you know how much trouble you've caused me? He stepped on Lianping's head with one foot and roared. If it weren't for you, I would still be counting money backstage, thinking about which slut to play with at night, and happily living my life. Kodo kicked Lianping a few more times. Seeing that he was unconscious, he wiped the blood on his hand and spat on Lianping. Ability users are amazing, right? Over 100 people were killed by you. You're so powerful. You still didn't die in my hands? Idiot, this society is all about IQ. No matter how fast you are or how strong you are, what's the use? As he cursed, Kodo kept stepping on Lianping's body. After a while, seeing that Lianping had no reaction, he stopped, panting heavily. He turned his gaze to the twins and sized them up with ill intentions. The two of you were just sold off last month. I didn't expect you to come back here after going around in circles. The twins seemed to have felt the coldness in Kodo's eyes. They hugged each other and shivered. Please let us go. We will serve you well. I beg you. Kodo smiled and walked towards the twins. You two are very beautiful, and it's not bad to play with. But you two have heard my ability, right? Once others find out about this ability of mine, it won't be of much use anymore. He walked up to the twins and touched their faces with a reluctant expression. I have no choice but to kill you. As he spoke, he aimed the pistol at one of the twins' heads. However, despite the fear in the twins' eyes, there was something wrong with them. The other party's eyes didn't seem to be looking at him. Instead, they looked behind him with a frightened expression. Behind him? Only then did Kodo realize that there were panting sounds coming from behind him at an unknown time. Panting? Could it be? Kodo didn't turn his head. He felt a pair of hands grabbing his arms and dragging him back. He struggled with all his might, but he couldn't get rid of them. The other party's hands were like steel claws, holding onto both his arms, making it impossible for him to move. "It's you. Why aren't you dead?" Kodo shouted, but the other party didn't reply. Only the sound of heavy panting came from the back of his head. Then, a strange force came from his arm. With a crack, his left hand was broken. However, the other party didn't stop. As Kodo screamed, the person behind him continued to exert force, pulling his arms to the left and right. Roar! The person behind him let out a furious roar. With another cracking sound, Kodo's hands made a series of tearing sounds like rags. His entire left arm was torn off, and blood gushed out from the wound on his shoulder. Kodo's mind went blank, and he could only let out a series of blood-curdling screams. What was more frightening was that there was a series of strange chewing sounds coming from behind Kodo. "He's eating me?" Kodo's heart was filled with fear, but it wasn't over yet. His right arm was also torn off like a toy. His eyes rolled back, and the intense pain seemed to melt his nerves. He was about to faint from the pain. However, the next moment, there was another sharp pain in his chest. A thick arm had pierced through his chest, and in the palm of that hand, his heart was still in its grasp. Then, with a slight force, Kodo's heart was crushed right in front of his eyes. Kodo's whole body trembled. He wanted to say something, but no sound came out of his mouth. The strange chewing sound were still coming from behind him. At the last moment before his death, his eyes were wide open, and his mouth was wide open. He still had a terrified expression on his face. Li Onping threw his body to the ground, and then threw away the arm in his hand. He was on all fours, and his head was crawling on Kodo's pierced chest. He was stretching his mouth toward the inside of the chest. At this time, from the outside, the injuries caused by the transfer of the previous injuries had disappeared. Obviously, his body's self-healing ability had healed the fatal injuries just now. In the distance, the twins only saw Li Onping lying on Kodo's body. His head kept moving up and down, and there was a series of terrifying chewing sounds coming from his mouth. The two of them covered their mouths tightly, afraid that they would attract Li Onping's attention. But when Li Onping raised his head and blood and flesh flowed down from the corner of his mouth, he let out a satisfied smile like a demon. One of the twins couldn't help but scream. Following her scream, Li Onping's eyes turned to look at her. Those were terrifying, despair-inducing eyes. Within the traces of blood, there was a thirst for slaughter, a greed for humans, as though he wanted to destroy all the good in the world. However, the red light in his eyes only lasted for a moment before it stopped. Li Onping stared blankly at the twins who were hugging each other and trembling. A trace of confusion flashed through his eyes. A few seconds later, he roared and threw the body in front of him away. He stretched out a hand toward his throat, as though he wanted to vomit out what he had just eaten, but he found that he couldn't do it. "Black, what did you do? Why did I lose control again?" "Oh, didn't I tell you?" Black sneered and said, "When your body is in mortal danger, my energy will invade your consciousness and awaken your body's instincts. You will use the most brutal method to destroy everything in front of you, and then absorb the energy recklessly to heal your injuries. To put it simply, once you are on the verge of death, you will go berserk. But when I was beaten up by the army in Zhongdu City, why didn't I go berserk? It looks the same, but weren't you still able to move when you were beaten up like that?" Black said, "But it was different just now. That Inshi man's ability was indeed strange. Although your injury looked similar to the previous serious injuries, it was indeed a fatal injury. Your entire body began to show signs of collapse from the inside. If you hadn't stored hundreds of souls in advance to heal your injuries, you would have died long ago." Damn it! Li Onping looked at his blood-stained hands and recalled what he had done just now. The taste of blood was still surging up from his mouth, and his heart was indescribably irritated, as though he wanted to destroy everything in front of him. You can only blame yourself for being too weak and not having enough experience. Otherwise, you wouldn't have ended up in such a miserable state and even went berserk. Black laughed and said, "But it's a blessing in disguise. After you ate this guy's soul and body, you became stronger. Now your strength is 3. 5. Your speed is 2. 3. And your stamina is 4. 2. Not only that, your ability has also leveled up. Now, purely based on the strength of your ability, without considering your physical strength, you're already a first-level ability user. By purely based on ability, it meant that Li Onping's ability could only kill ordinary people. Its power was indeed very weak, without considering his physical destructive power. His ability was indeed only at the first-level ability standard. First-level ability? With that said, Li Onping did feel the difference in his body. His thoughts seemed to be clearer, and the flow of energy in his body was no longer as obscure as before. He could not even feel it. He clenched his fist hard and felt a gas-like energy flowing around in his body. Wherever he exerted force, the energy seemed to flow to that part of his body. Not only that, you can now absorb souls from a distance. Within 5 meters, you can absorb the souls of ordinary people. Oh, although he had expected this, the enhancement of this ability was indeed a qualitative improvement for Li Onping. However, although his strength had increased, he was still unhappy, as if he had eaten a pile of shit in his mouth. He glanced at the scene, then turned around and walked towards the elevator. You guys wait here, where you can release the female slaves behind the stage. In a few hours, I will completely eliminate Lone Wolf. Then I will call the police and ask them to come here pick you guys up. Before that, you guys better stay here and don't go anywhere. After that, Li Onping went into the elevator without looking back. It seemed like he did not want to face the twins who saw him go berserk. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.